Single Dad got fired for being late after helping a pregnant woman. She owned the entire company chain. He lost everything for doing the right thing until the woman he helped walked into his life again and revealed she owned everything he just got fired from. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning light struggled through heavy clouds as Ethan Cole stood in his small kitchen, frantically waving a dish towel at the smoke detector. The burnt smell of toast filled the air while his old coffee maker sputtered and clicked, threatening to give up entirely. "Lily, sweetheart, have you found your other shoe yet?" he called out, his voice carrying down the short hallway of their modest two-bedroom apartment. "Can't find it, Daddy," came the muffled reply from somewhere under her bed. Ethan glanced at the clock, 7:15 a.m. His heart rate picked up a notch. They needed to leave in 15 minutes to get Lily to school on time, and he couldn't be late for work. Not today. He quickly scraped the blackened toast into the trash and popped 2 fresh slices into the toaster, adjusting the dial down a notch. The coffee maker gave one final sputter before producing enough coffee to fill his travel mug halfway. It would have to do. Got it. Lily emerged triumphant, her brown hair tousled, holding up a small purple sneaker like a trophy. Her other shoe was already on, though her sock was bunched up around her ankle. "That's my girl." Ethan smiled, kneeling to help her with the shoe. "Now, let's fix that hair, okay?" Lily sat at their small kitchen table while Ethan grabbed her brush and hair tie. His fingers had gotten better at making ponytails over the past 2 years, though Sarah had always made it look so effortless. The thought of his late wife sent a familiar ache through his chest, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. Their apartment wasn't much: worn carpet, dated wallpaper, and furniture that had seen better days. But Ethan had done his best to make it feel like home. Lily's artwork covered the refrigerator, bright splashes of crayon and marker that brought life to the tired kitchen. Photos of happier times lined the walls. Sarah's smile frozen in time, Lily's first steps, family picnics and better days. The toaster popped, and this time the bread was perfectly golden. Ethan quickly spread peanut butter on both slices, cutting them diagonally just the way Lily liked. "Daddy, wait!" Lily called out as he started packing her lunch. She ran to her room and came back clutching a piece of paper. "I made this for you last night." Ethan took the drawing, and his throat tightened with emotion. There he was, rendered in crayon, wearing what looked like angel wings. Above the figure, in careful second-grade handwriting, were the words, "Daddy helps people." "See? Because you're always helping everybody," Lily explained proudly. "Like Mrs. Jenkins when her car wouldn't start, and Mr. Rodriguez when he needed help carrying his groceries." Ethan pulled his daughter into a tight hug, kissing the top of her head. "This is beautiful, sweetie. I'm going to keep it right here in my wallet." He carefully folded the paper and tucked it away, right next to the last photo taken of Sarah. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Mr. Dempsey. "Don't be late for the meeting, corporate's visiting." Ethan's stomach tightened. The regional manager had been dropping hints about a possible promotion for weeks. With corporate visiting, this could be his chance to finally move up from delivery supervisor. The extra money would make such a difference. Maybe they could even move to a better apartment, one closer to Lily's school. "Okay, Munchkin, time to roll." He helped Lily into her raincoat and grabbed her backpack, doing a quick mental checklist. Homework folder, lunch, permission slip for the upcoming field trip. "Can we have pizza tonight?" Lily asked, hopefully as they headed down the stairs to the parking lot. "We'll see how the day goes," Ethan replied, though his budget was already stretched thin. "But I promise I'll pick you up at 3 o'clock sharp." The rain was starting to fall harder now, drumming against the metal awning over the apartment building's entrance. They made a dash for his old pickup truck, their feet splashing through puddles. "Remember what Mom used to say about rainy days?" Lily asked as she climbed into the passenger seat. Ethan's hand paused on the key in the ignition. "That they're just God's way of watering his garden and making rainbows." Lily added with a grin, "That's right, kiddo." He started the engine, which coughed twice before turning over. The wipers squeaked across the windshield, fighting against the increasing downpour. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Ethan glanced at his daughter, her face pressed against the window as she watched the rain create rivers down the glass. She was so much like Sarah, the same gentle spirit, the same way of finding beauty in ordinary things. He'd do anything to give her the life she deserved, to make sure she never felt the absence of her mother too keenly. The pickup truck rumbled down the wet streets of their small Missouri town, past the familiar landmarks of their daily routine. The corner grocery where he worked, the park where they spent Sunday afternoons, the church where they'd said goodbye to Sarah 2 years ago. Lily hummed softly to herself, some tune from a cartoon show, while Ethan's mind raced through his upcoming meeting. He'd prepared thoroughly, reviewing delivery schedules and efficiency reports until his eyes burned. This promotion could change everything for them. They pulled up to Lily's elementary school, joining the line of parents dropping off their children. When it was their turn, Ethan leaned over to give Lily one more hug. "Have a great day, sweetheart. I'll see you at 3. Don't forget your angel." "Wings, Daddy!" Lily called out as she hopped down from the truck, her backpack bouncing as she ran through the rain to the covered walkway. Ethan watched until she disappeared inside the building, then checked his watch. He had just enough time to make it to work before the meeting. The rain hammered against the roof of his truck as he pulled away from the school, his daughter's drawing safely tucked in his wallet, a reminder of why every struggle was worth it. The wipers squeaked across Ethan's windshield as he guided his old pickup down the winding country road. Rain pelted the roof in a steady rhythm, matching the nervous tapping of his fingers on the steering wheel. The digital clock on his dashboard read 7:35 a.m., plenty of time to make the 8 meeting, as long as traffic cooperated. "Route efficiency improvements," he muttered to himself, rehearsing his presentation. "By adjusting delivery schedules to avoid peak traffic hours, we can reduce fuel costs by 17%. He paused, shaking his head. "No, keep it simple. Mr. Dempsey hates complicated numbers." The road ahead curved through farmland, empty fields stretching out on either side. Despite the gloomy weather, Ethan felt a flutter of hope in his chest. This meeting could change everything. After 2 years of scraping by on his supervisor's salary, a promotion would mean better hours, better pay, maybe even enough to move Lily into a house with a real backyard. Through the gray sheet of rain, a hazard light caught his attention. As he drew closer, he made out the shape of a car pulled onto the shoulder, its right rear tire visibly flat. A woman stood beside it, one hand protectively cradling her pregnant belly, while the other waved desperately at passing vehicles. Cars zoomed past her without slowing. Ethan's foot eased off the gas pedal. He glanced at the clock again. 7:40 now. Still time, but barely. The image of Mr. Dempsey's stern face flashed through his mind, along with his warning text, "Don't be late." The woman's face was pinched with worry as another car rushed past, spraying her with road water. She looked soaked to the bone. Lily's drawing fluttered on the passenger seat. Those carefully drawn angel wings, the wobbly letters spelling out, "Daddy helps people." His daughter's voice echoed in his mind. "You always say helping others matters more than anything, right, Daddy?" "Right," Ethan whispered, already turning on his blinker and pulling onto the shoulder. He grabbed his rain jacket from behind the seat and stepped out into the downpour. "Need some help?" he called, jogging over to her. Relief flooded her face. "Oh, thank goodness. I've been stuck here for 20 minutes. Her voice was soft and cultured, though strain showed around her eyes. "I hit a pothole, and now—" She gestured helplessly at the flat tire. "Let's get you fixed up," Ethan said, already kneeling to check the damage. "I'm Ethan, by the way." "Grace," she replied, hugging her arms around herself as another gust of wind drove the rain sideways. "I hate to trouble you, but I have an important appointment at 8:30, and my phone's dead, and nobody would stop." "No trouble at all," Ethan assured her, though his stomach clenched as he glimpsed the clock on his phone. 7:45. He kept his voice steady and calm. "Is it all right if I check your trunk for the spare?" Grace nodded gratefully, fumbling with her key fob. The trunk popped open, revealing a pristine spare tire and jack. At least, that was something. As Ethan worked, positioning the jack and loosening the lug nuts, Grace stood under her umbrella, alternating between anxious glances at her watch and concerned looks at him. "You're getting soaked," she fretted, "and I'm sure you have somewhere to be." "Nothing that can't wait," Ethan replied, though his hands moved faster. Water dripped from his hair into his eyes as he cranked the jack. "Doctor's appointment, you said?" "Yes." Her hand returned to her. "Belly. Just a checkup, but—" She trailed off, clearly not wanting to share more. "How far along are you?" Ethan asked, trying to keep her mind off the time as he wrestled with a particularly stubborn lug nut. A small smile touched her lips. 7 months. It's a boy. "Congratulations," Ethan said warmly, remembering how excited he'd been when Lily was on the way. "I have an 8-year-old daughter. Best thing that ever happened to me." Grace's expression softened. "You must be a wonderful father." Ethan focused on mounting the spare tire, blinking rain from his eyes. "I try my best," he said quietly. "Some days are harder than others. I can imagine." There was something knowing in her tone, but before she could say more, Ethan was tightening the last lug nut. "There you go," he said, standing up and wiping his hands on his soaked jeans. "That should get you to your appointment, but you'll want to get a proper tire as soon as possible." "I can't thank you enough," Grace said, reaching for her purse. "Please, let me give you something for your trouble." Ethan held up his hands, backing away. "No need. Just pay it forward sometime." Grace studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I won't forget this kindness," she said finally. "Not many people would stop to help a stranger these days." "Take care of yourself," Ethan said, already heading back to his truck. "And good luck with everything." As he climbed into the cab, his clothes dripping onto the seat, the dashboard clock glared at him accusingly. 8:10 a.m., 25 minutes late. His heart sank like a stone as he thought about Mr. Dempsey's face, about the corporate visitors, about all his carefully prepared notes, about delivery routes that would now go unheard. Ethan burst through the employee entrance, water dripping from his jacket and forming puddles at his feet. His shoes squeaked against the polished linoleum as he rushed down the hallway toward the back office. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making the institutional green walls look even more sickly than usual. Through the office window, he could see them waiting. Mr. Dempsey's tall frame looming over the conference table, surrounded by people in dark business suits. Ethan's heart pounded as he grabbed a paper towel from the break room, trying desperately to dry his face and smooth his rain-soaked hair. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door. "I'm so sorry I'm late, Mr. Dempsey. There was an emergency. Nice of you to finally join us, Cole." Dempsey's voice cut through the room like ice. He stood with his arms crossed, jaw clenched tight. "We've been waiting nearly 30 minutes. The corporate auditors, 3 men and 2 women in expensive suits, watched the exchange with cold, assessing eyes. Their leather portfolios lay open on the table, pens poised to take notes. Among them sat the regional manager, a sharp-featured woman whose disapproving frown made Ethan's stomach clench. "I know, sir, and I sincerely apologize," Ethan said, fighting to keep his voice steady. There was a pregnant woman stranded on County Road 8 with a flat tire. She needed— "Excuses don't feed families, Cole." Dempsey's face reddened as he raised his voice. "Do you have any idea how this looks? We're here to discuss efficiency improvements, and you can't even show up on time." Several other employees stood awkwardly along the walls, their eyes fixed on the floor. Sarah, from accounting, nervously shuffled some papers. Tom, from receiving, suddenly became very interested in his coffee cup. "But sir, if you just let me explain." "What's to explain?" Dempsey gestured sharply at the corporate visitors. "These people flew in from Chicago for this meeting. Their time is valuable, unlike yours, apparently." The regional manager cleared her throat. "Mr. Dempsey, perhaps we should—" "No, Miss Hamilton." Dempsey's tone grew even harder. "This is exactly the kind of irresponsible behavior that's been dragging down our numbers. Cole here thinks he can just waltz in whenever he pleases, making up stories about helping strangers instead of doing his job." Ethan felt his face burning. "They're not stories, sir. I couldn't just leave her there in the rain. She was pregnant, and enough." Dempsey slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. "You've been skating by on mediocre performance for months. Always just barely meeting quotas. Always with some excuse about your personal situation." The words hit Ethan like physical blows. He thought about all the times he'd stayed late, all the extra routes he'd covered when other drivers called in sick, all the careful notes he'd prepared for this very meeting, now crumpled and damp in his pocket. "Mr. Cole," the regional manager spoke again, her voice professionally detached. "Your record shows multiple instances of tardiness over the past year. While the circumstances may be understandable, this pattern suggests a fundamental inability to meet the company's basic expectations." Dempsey's thin lips curved into a satisfied smile. "Couldn't have said it better myself, Miss Hamilton." He turned back to Ethan, straightening his tie. "Cole, you're fired. Clear out your locker and turn in your badge. Security will escort you out." The words seemed to echo in the suddenly silent room. Ethan stood there, water still dripping from his clothes, unable to process what he'd just heard. "Fired? But my daughter, I have bills to—" "That's no longer our concern." Dempsey waved dismissively. "Jerry, please show Mr. Cole to his locker." The security guard, someone Ethan had shared lunch breaks with for 2 years, stepped forward reluctantly. "Come on, Ethan," he said softly. "Let's go." In a daze, Ethan followed Jerry down the hallway to the employee locker room. The metal door creaked as he opened it, revealing the familiar space where he'd kept his extra uniform, his daughter's drawings, and the photo of his late wife that had given him strength on difficult days. His hands trembled as he pulled out the cardboard box Jerry offered him. One by one, he placed his belongings inside. The coffee mug Lily had painted for him last Father's Day, his spare work shoes, the small magnetic calendar where he'd tracked his delivery routes. Other employees filtered in and out, avoiding his eyes, hurrying past with mumbled, "Sorry, man," or tough break comments. The sympathy in their voices only made it worse. When the locker was empty, Ethan closed it for the last time. The metal clang seemed to finalize everything. Jerry patted his shoulder awkwardly before leading him back through the building. The rain hadn't let up as Ethan stepped out into the parking lot, clutching his box of belongings. Water immediately began soaking through the cardboard, threatening to dissolve the last 2 years of his life. His truck sat alone at the far end of the lot, and each step toward it felt heavier than the last. He watched the building's reflection ripple in the puddles as he walked, seeing his dreams of stability and a better life for Lily dissolve just as quickly as the raindrops hitting the pavement. The rain had finally stopped, but dark clouds still hung low in the sky as Ethan's old pickup truck rumbled down familiar streets. His daughter's colorful drawing lay on the passenger seat, slightly crumpled from being stuffed in his box of belongings. The crayon-drawn angel wings seemed to mock him now. "Daddy helps people," written in Lily's messy 8-year-old handwriting. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel as he drove past the grocery store where he'd worked for the past 5 years. The same store where, just an hour ago, he'd stood in shocked silence as Mr. Dempsey had fired him in front of everyone. The memory of their stares burned in his mind, some pitying, others avoiding his gaze entirely. Without really thinking about it, Ethan found himself turning on River Road. The old gravel path led to a quiet spot where he and Laura used to bring Lily for picnics, back when their little family was still whole. He pulled into the empty parking area and cut the engine. The Missouri River flowed steadily below, its waters brown and swollen from the rain. Ethan got out of the truck, leaving the drawing on the seat, and walked to the rail-lined overlook. The air was thick with moisture and the earthy smell of wet leaves. "What's the point?" he whispered to the rushing water below. His voice was hoarse, barely audible over the river's constant motion. What's the point of being good when it just leaves you worse off? The scene from this morning played through his mind again. The pregnant woman standing in the rain, other cars speeding past her. He'd stopped because it was the right thing to do. Because it's what Laura would have done. The thought of Laura brought a fresh wave of pain, and suddenly he was lost in a memory from 3 years ago. They'd been sitting in her hospital room, the beeping of machines, a constant reminder of what they were facing. Laura's hand had been so thin in his, but her grip was still strong. "Promise me something," she'd said, her blue eyes intense despite the illness that was stealing her away. "Promise you'll always do the right thing, no matter the cost. That's what makes life worth living, Ethan. That's what I want Lily to learn." He'd promised, of course. He'd have promised her anything in that moment. Back in the present, Ethan wiped moisture from his cheeks, rain or tears. He wasn't sure anymore. "I tried, Laura," he whispered to the river, to the clouds, to wherever she might be now. "I really tried." The sound of a passing car snapped him back to reality. He checked his watch. 2:30 p.m. Time to pick up Lily from school. He couldn't let her see him like this. Climbing back into the truck, his eyes fell on her drawing again. He carefully smoothed it out and tucked it into his jacket pocket, close to his heart. The elementary school playground was alive with activity when he pulled up. Lily's pigtails bounced as she ran to the truck, her purple backpack almost as big as she was. Her smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Daddy!" She scrambled into her booster seat, already launching into a story about her day. "We learned about butterflies, and I got to feed the class hamster, and Jenny said she's having a birthday party next weekend." "That's great, sweetie," Ethan managed, trying to keep his voice steady as he drove them home. How was he going to tell her? How could he explain that Daddy had lost his job because he'd stopped to help someone? Their apartment felt smaller than usual when they walked in. Lily dropped her backpack by the door and headed straight for the kitchen. "Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" "Sure, honey." Ethan followed her, grateful for the distraction of routine tasks. While the water boiled, Lily sat at their small kitchen table, working on her homework. "How was work today, Daddy?" she asked, not looking up from her math problems. Ethan's throat tightened. He stirred the macaroni with more force than necessary. It was hard today, sweetheart. Did you help lots of people?" The innocent question hit him like a punch to the gut. "Yeah," he said softly. "I tried to." Later that evening, they sat together on their worn couch, watching one of Lily's favorite cartoon shows. She'd changed into her butterfly pajamas, and her head was growing heavy against his shoulder. Ethan held her drawing in his hands, studying every crayon stroke, every smudge and imperfection that made it perfect. Lily's breathing had grown deep and regular. She was asleep. Ethan looked down at his daughter's peaceful face, so much like her mother's. The weight of everything he wasn't telling her pressed against his chest, heavier than any box of groceries he'd ever lifted. He sat there in the blue glow of the television, holding his sleeping daughter and her drawing of an angel who helped people, wondering how he was going to keep his promise to both his girls, Laura's demand to always do right, and Lily's belief that her daddy was a hero. The morning sunlight filtered through the worn curtains of their small kitchen as Ethan sat at the scratched wooden table, his laptop open before him, the gentle clicking of keys mixed with the sizzle of eggs on the stove, and Lily's animated chatter about her upcoming school play. "And Mrs. Peterson says, I get to be the tree that talks," Lily exclaimed, swinging her legs under the table as she colored another picture. "Did you know trees could talk, Daddy?" Ethan managed a genuine smile despite the knot in his stomach. "In plays, anything's possible, sweetheart." He turned back to the screen, scrolling through another job listing that required minimum 5 years management experience. His shoulders slumped slightly. "Can you help me practice my lines after school?" Lily asked, her crayon moving in broad strokes across her paper. "Of course, honey." Ethan stood to flip the eggs, trying to keep his voice light. "But first, we need to get you ready for school. How about some breakfast?" As he slid the eggs onto a plate, his phone buzzed on the counter. An unknown number. Usually, he'd let it go to voicemail, but with job applications out everywhere, he couldn't risk missing an opportunity. "Hello?" he answered, trying to sound professional. "Is this Ethan Cole?" A woman's voice, familiar but not immediately placeable. "This is Grace Whitmore, the woman you helped yesterday with the flat tire?" Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. "Oh, yes. Hello, Mrs. Whitmore." "Please, call me Grace," she said warmly. "I've been thinking about your kindness yesterday, especially after I made it to my appointment on time. I'd really like to thank you properly." "That's really not necessary," Ethan replied, watching as Lily carefully arranged her crayons. "By color. Anyone would have done the same." "But they didn't," Grace countered gently. "I watched at least 12 cars drive past before you stopped." "Please, let me at least buy you a coffee." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I appreciate the offer, but I insist," Grace interrupted, her tone friendly but firm. "I know a lovely little diner on Oak Street, Marie's. Could you meet me there tomorrow morning?" Pride warred with practicality in Ethan's mind. He didn't want charity, but networking could lead to job opportunities, and something in Grace's voice suggested she wouldn't take no for an answer. "Daddy, my eggs are getting cold." Lily called out, breaking his internal debate. "Just a moment, sweetheart." He covered the phone briefly, then returned to the call. "Tomorrow morning would be fine, after I drop my daughter at school. Around 8:30? "Perfect," Grace replied, sounding pleased. "I'll see you then, Ethan. And thank you again." After hanging up, Ethan served Lily her breakfast, watching as she drowned her eggs in ketchup, a habit that would have made Laura cringe and laugh at the same time. The memory brought a bittersweet smile to his face. "Who was that on the phone?" Lily asked between bites. "Remember when Daddy stopped to help someone yesterday?" Ethan sat down with his own plate. That was her calling to say thank you. Lily's face lit up. "See, just like my drawing. You're helping people, Daddy." "I suppose I am, kiddo." Ethan reached over to ruffle her hair, earning a giggle. "Now, finish your breakfast. We need to get you to school on time." As he packed Lily's lunch, her words echoed in his mind. The drawing still sat on the counter where he'd left it last night, those crayon angel wings a reminder of his daughter's unwavering faith in him. Maybe there was something to be said for keeping that faith, even when life threw curveballs. The morning routine continued, teeth brushing, hair combing, backpack checking. Through it all, Ethan's mind occasionally drifted to tomorrow's meeting. He wasn't comfortable accepting thanks for what he considered basic human decency, But Grace's insistence had been hard to refuse. As he helped Lily tie her shoes, she looked up at him with Laura's eyes. "Are you going to help more people today, Daddy?" "We'll see, sweetheart," he replied, double knotting her laces. "Right now, my job is getting you to school on time." Before heading out, Ethan paused by the counter, picking up Lily's drawing. The simple artwork captured something pure, his daughter's complete belief in goodness, in helping others regardless of the cost. Despite everything that had happened, he couldn't bring himself to regret stopping for Grace. "Maybe doing the right thing isn't so bad," he murmured, carefully placing the drawing on the refrigerator with a magnet. "Come on, Daddy," Lily called from the door, her backpack bouncing as she jumped impatiently. "We're going to be late." Ethan grabbed his keys, his daughter's enthusiasm infectious. Whatever tomorrow's meeting might bring, today he had a little girl who believed in him, and sometimes that was enough to keep going. The morning air was crisp as Ethan pulled into the parking lot of Annie's Diner, a humble establishment on the outskirts of town. The neon open sign flickered weakly in the early light, and through the windows, he could see the usual morning crowd of truckers and early shift workers hunched over their coffee cups. He was 15 minutes early, a habit he couldn't shake even after losing his job. His worn pickup truck looked out of place among the newer vehicles, but he'd learned long ago not to let such things bother him. Straightening his collar in the rearview mirror, he took a deep breath and stepped out into the cool morning air. Inside, the diner smelled of fresh coffee and bacon. Sally, the veteran waitress who seemed as much a fixture as the chrome counter itself, gave him a warm nod as he slid into a corner booth. The vinyl seat squeaked beneath him, and he absently smoothed the laminated menu with nervous hands. "Just coffee for now," he told Sally when she approached. "I'm waiting for someone." The bell above the door chimed at exactly 9 o'clock. Grace Whitmore entered, and the entire atmosphere of the humble diner seemed to shift. She wore a camel-colored coat that, even to Ethan's untrained eye, whispered of expensive taste. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and despite her advanced pregnancy, she moved with natural grace. Their eyes met, and she smiled warmly, making her way to his booth. Ethan stood quickly, another ingrained habit, and waited until she was seated before sitting back down. "Mr. Cole," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for meeting me. Please, just Ethan," he replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm but gentle. Sally appeared with his coffee and raised an eyebrow at Grace. "What can I get you, hun?" "Herbal tea, if you have it," Grace replied, "and maybe some toast." After Sally left, Grace turned her full attention to Ethan. "I wanted to thank you properly for what you did the other day. Not many people would stop in that weather." Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his coffee cup warming his hands. Any decent man would have stopped. You needed help, that's all there was to it. But they didn't stop, did they? Grace's eyes were kind but intense. "I watched at least 10 cars pass by before you came along, and you were clearly on your way somewhere important." Ethan's throat tightened slightly at the memory. He shrugged, trying to keep his voice light. "Well, sometimes being late is worth it if it means helping someone." Grace's tea arrived, and she wrapped her hands around the mug, mirroring his posture. "Speaking of which, how did your employer take your tardiness?" Something in her tone made Ethan look up sharply. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes held genuine concern. He considered deflecting, but decided honesty was the better choice. They actually let me go," he admitted, studying the coffee rings on the table. "It was an important meeting with corporate visitors. Bad timing, I guess." Grace's sharp intake of breath made him look up again. Her face had gone pale, and one hand moved protectively to her rounded belly. "Oh no," she whispered. "You lost your job because you stopped to help me? It's not your fault," Ethan said quickly, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Mr. Dempsey, my boss, he'd been looking for a reason. I was probably on borrowed time anyway." But still, Grace's voice was strained. "You have responsibilities? Family, perhaps?" Ethan thought of Lily's drawing, still carefully preserved in his jacket pocket. "My daughter," he said softly. "She's 8. Grace's eyes filled with tears, and she blinked them away quickly. "Please, let me help. I have connections. I could—" "No," Ethan cut in, gentle but firm. "I appreciate the offer, truly, but I'll find something else. I always do." "You're very proud, aren't you?" Grace observed, but there was no judgment in her voice. "Not proud," Ethan corrected. Just. I believe we get what we earn in this life, and I've always managed to earn enough. Grace studied him for a long moment, her tea growing cold between her hands. There was something in her expression he couldn't quite read, a mixture of admiration and something else, something that looked almost like determination. Sometimes, she said finally, good people deserve good turns, Mr. Cole, whether they ask for them or not. Ethan smiled politely, not quite sure how to respond to that. He watched as she reached for her purse, but he quickly pulled out his own wallet. Please, he said, let me get this. You really are something else, Grace said, shaking her head with a small smile. She stood carefully, adjusting her coat. Thank you for meeting me, Ethan. And thank you again for your help that morning. It meant more than you know. Ethan nodded, standing as well. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Whitmore, and congratulations again on the baby. She gave him one last thoughtful look before turning and walking out of the diner, her elegant coat swishing softly as she went. Through the window, Ethan watched her climb into a sleek black car that had pulled up to the curb. Grace's heels clicked against the polished marble floor as she made her way through the gleaming lobby of Whitmore Holdings. The modern glass building stretched 40 stories into the sky, its windows reflecting the morning sun like mirrors. Her assistant, Jenny, hurried to meet her at the elevator, tablet in hand. Good morning, Miss Whitmore, Jenny said, falling into step beside her. How was your morning meeting? Grace touched her pregnant belly, a small smile playing on her lips. Eye-opening, Jenny. Very eye-opening. The elevator whisked them to the top floor, where Grace's father had once presided over their family's business empire. Now, just 3 months after his passing, it was her responsibility. The weight of it pressed heavily on her shoulders, especially today. They walked past the reception area, where Whitmore Holdings was mounted in brass letters on the wall, with parent company of Fresh Mart stores written beneath in smaller text. Grace paused, studying the words as if seeing them for the first time. Jenny, she said, entering her spacious corner office, please pull up everything we have on an employee named Ethan Cole. He worked at store 471 until yesterday morning. Her assistant's fingers flew across the tablet right away. Grace settled behind her father's old desk, her desk now, and gazed at the photo of him that sat in a silver frame. He'd always taught her that true leadership meant taking care of your people. What would you do, Dad? She whispered. Jenny returned moments later with the file displayed on the office's wall screen. Ethan Cole, age 42, delivery supervisor at store 471 for the past 5 years. Widowed, 1 dependent. Consistent performance reviews, perfect attendance until, she hesitated. Until yesterday? Grace finished, her voice tight. Show me the termination report. The document appeared on screen, Martin Dempsey's signature bold at the bottom. Grace read it twice, her anger building with each word. The report was cold, clinical. Terminated for gross tardiness and insubordination. Subject arrived 25 minutes late to mandatory meeting with corporate representatives. Showed no remorse for unprofessional behavior. No remorse? Grace stood up, pacing the room. He was late because he was helping me change a tire in the rain. Jenny's eyes widened. That was you, Miss Whitmore? Grace nodded, running her hands through her hair in frustration. I was having cramps, worried about the baby. My tire blew out on that country road, and nobody would stop. Nobody except Ethan Cole. She touched her belly again. He didn't know who I was. He just helped. Because that's who he is. She walked to the window, looking out over the city she'd grown up in. The same city where, somewhere, Ethan was probably filling out job applications, trying to figure out how to support his little girl. Pull up his complete employment history, Grace commanded. Everything. More documents filled the screen. 5 years of perfect evaluations, letters of praise from customers, a note about him organizing a food drive for a homeless shelter. Another about him covering shifts for a coworker during a family crisis. Now show me Martin Dempsey's personnel file. Jenny complied, and a different picture emerged. Dempsey had a history of harsh disciplinary actions, high turnover rates in his district, and multiple complaints about his management style, all dismissed because his stores showed good profits. Grace's jaw tightened. He fired a good man for being 25 minutes late. 1 time. After 5 years of perfect service. She shook her head. And not just any good man, someone who stopped to help a pregnant woman in distress. She returned to her desk, pressing the intercom. Legal department, please, a crisp voice responded. Yes, Miss Whitmore? I need options for creating a new corporate position. Something in community relations, focusing on employee engagement and social responsibility. We can draft some proposals. Timeline? Yesterday, Grace replied firmly. She spent the next hour reviewing documents, making notes, building a plan. It had to be perfect, had to preserve Ethan's dignity while correcting this injustice. No charity, no handouts, just recognition of true worth. Jenny, she called out, contact HR. I want a complete audit of all terminations in the past year under Martin Dempsey's authority. And give me the board's schedule we need to discuss management restructuring. Her assistant nodded, but hesitated at the door. Miss Whitmore, if I may, your father would be proud of what you're doing. Grace looked at her father's picture again, remembering his words. Money builds companies, but people build success. She touched the frame gently. Standing at her window, Grace watched the city bustle below. Somewhere out there was a little girl whose father had lost his job for doing the right thing. Somewhere was a man who'd chosen kindness over self-interest and paid a heavy price. No good deed should cost a good man his dignity, she whispered, pressing her hand against the cool glass. The weight of her position, her name, and her responsibility settled around her like a mantle. She wasn't just Grace Whitmore anymore. She was a force that could right wrongs, restore justice, and maybe, just maybe, make her father's company truly worthy of his legacy. The morning sun filtered through the worn curtains of Ethan's small apartment kitchen. He sat at the table, circling job listings in the newspaper with a red pen, his coffee growing cold beside him. The past 2 days had been a blur of online applications and unanswered phone calls. Lily's cereal bowl sat empty in the sink, her cheerful humming drifting from the living room where she worked on her homework. Despite everything, her optimism remained unshaken. It was both his comfort and his greatest worry. The phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. Hello, this is Ethan Cole speaking, he answered, trying to keep the weariness from his voice. Mr. Cole? A professional female voice responded. This is Sandra Martinez from Community Solutions Partners. We received your application for our logistics consulting position. Ethan frowned, not remembering applying to any such company. I'm sorry, I don't recall. Your resume was forwarded to us by a business associate? Sandra explained smoothly. We're particularly interested in your experience with delivery route optimization and community engagement. Would you be available for an interview this afternoon? He glanced at the kitchen clock. Lily would be at her after-school art program until 5. Yes, I could do that. Excellent. Shall we say 2 o'clock? Our office is downtown, in the Bedford building. After getting the details, Ethan hung up and stared at his phone. Something about this felt too good to be true, but he couldn't afford to be suspicious of good fortune right now. The Bedford building turned out to be a modest but well-maintained office complex. The elevator carried him to the 3rd floor, where Community Solutions Partners was printed in simple letters on a glass door. Inside, the office was clean and professional, but not flashy. Sandra Martinez, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair, greeted him warmly. Thank you for coming in on such short notice, Mr. Cole. The interview room was comfortable, with natural light streaming through large windows. Sandra reviewed his experience, asking detailed questions about his work at Freshmart and his ideas about community engagement. We're looking for someone who understands both the practical and human aspects of logistics, she explained. Someone who sees beyond spreadsheets to the people they affect. Ethan thought about his years managing deliveries, how he'd learned every driver's name, their family situations, their challenges. In my experience, the best solutions come from understanding people first, numbers second. Sandra nodded approvingly. Tell me about a time you had to make a difficult decision between efficiency and human needs. Without hesitation, Ethan shared the story of how he'd once rerouted an entire day's deliveries because one of his driver's children was sick in the hospital. It cost us some overtime, but keeping a good employee and, more importantly, being there for someone in need, that's always worth it. The interview continued for nearly an hour. Sandra seemed particularly interested in his community involvement and his approach to problem solving. When they finished, she smiled warmly. Mr. Cole, I'm authorized to offer you the position today. It's a 3-month contract to start, with potential for permanent placement. Would you be interested? Ethan's heart leaped. The salary she mentioned was even better than his previous job. Yes, absolutely. Excellent. We'll email the paperwork today. Can you start Monday? Walking back to his truck, Ethan felt lighter than he had in days. He checked his watch just enough time to pick up Lily's favorite pizza before getting her from art class. Across town, in her high-rise office, Grace Whitmore watched a brief email notification pop up on her screen. Candidate EC. Successfully placed CSP initiative. She smiled softly, one hand resting on her growing belly. Thank you, Jenny. She called to her assistant. You can tell Sandra she did excellent work. Later that evening, Ethan sat with Lily at their small kitchen table, pizza boxes open between them. Her face was bright with excitement as he shared his news. So, it's like your old job? Lily asked, picking off a pepperoni. Sort of, sweetie. I'll be helping different companies figure out better ways to help their communities. He smiled, thinking how proud Laura would have been of this opportunity. Things are finally looking up. I knew they would, Daddy, Lily beamed. I asked Mom to send you something good, and she did. Ethan's throat tightened with emotion. He reached across the table and squeezed her small hand. You did, huh? Uh-huh, every night before bed. She took another bite of pizza. Can we have ice cream to celebrate? He laughed. I think we can manage that. Later, after their impromptu celebration, Ethan tucked Lily into bed. Her room was cozy, walls covered with her artwork, including the angel drawing she'd made of him. The nightlight cast a warm glow across her peaceful face. Daddy? She murmured sleepily. Yes, sweetheart? I'm glad you're happy again. He kissed her forehead gently. Me too, baby. Me too. As she drifted off to sleep, he watched her for a moment, overwhelmed with gratitude. Maybe Laura's still watching out for us, he whispered, adjusting her blanket one last time before quietly closing the door. The morning air felt different as Ethan walked into the bright, open office space of Community Solutions Partners. Gone were the harsh fluorescent lights and sterile cubicles of his old workplace. Instead, warm sunlight streamed through large windows, and workstations were arranged in friendly clusters. Plants dotted the corners, and the walls displayed colorful infographics about community involvement. Jennifer Torres, his new supervisor, greeted him with a genuine smile. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an easy manner that immediately put him at ease. Welcome aboard, Ethan. Let me show you around. She gestured toward the office space. We're a small team, but we do important work helping businesses streamline their community operations. As they walked, Ethan noticed the relaxed atmosphere. People chatted easily between tasks, and there was none of the tense urgency he'd grown used to at his old job. Your experience in logistics is exactly what we need, Jennifer explained, leading him to his desk. We've got several projects that could use your perspective. Ethan settled into his workspace, arranging the few personal items he'd brought. A photo of Lily and the drawing she'd made of him with angel wings. Jennifer noticed the drawing and smiled warmly. Your daughter's work? She asked. Yes, Ethan replied, his chest swelling with pride. She's 8. It's beautiful. Now, let me introduce you to someone who'll be working closely with you. She led Ethan to a corner workspace where a man in his 60s sat, his silver hair neatly combed, wearing a cardigan despite the warm weather. This is Ben Harris. He's been with us forever and knows everything about everyone. Ben stood up with a friendly grin, extending his hand. Semi-retired, he corrected with a wink. They can't get rid of me that easily. Throughout the morning, Ethan dove into his first assignment, analyzing delivery routes for a local food bank partnership. As he reviewed the current system, he noticed several inefficiencies that could be easily fixed. During lunch break, Ben invited him to share the small break room table. So, what do you make of our little operation so far? Ben asked, unwrapping a sandwich. Actually, I've already spotted some ways we could improve the food bank routes, Ethan replied, pulling out his notepad. If we reorganize the pickup schedule and combine some of the shorter routes, we could serve 30% more families with the same resources. Ben's eyes lit up with interest as Ethan explained his ideas. You know something? You should present this at the team meeting this afternoon. The afternoon meeting went better than Ethan could have hoped. His suggestions were met with enthusiastic nods and thoughtful questions. Jennifer took detailed notes, clearly impressed. This is exactly the kind of fresh thinking we need, she said. Would you be willing to implement these changes as a pilot program? Ethan nodded, feeling a warm glow of satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. Of course, I'd be happy to. Throughout the day, Ben stopped by occasionally, offering quiet advice and sharing stories from his years of experience. "You remind me of myself when I was younger," he said during an afternoon coffee break, "always looking for ways to make things better." "Were you always in logistics?" Ethan asked. Ben's eyes grew distant for a moment. 40 years in warehouses and delivery systems. Lost my Sarah 10 years ago. Work became my whole life after that. He paused, studying Ethan. "Don't make the same mistake I did. There's more to life than work, even when work is good." Ethan felt a connection with the older man's words, thinking of his own loss and how he'd thrown himself into providing for Lily. As the afternoon progressed, Ethan noticed occasional visits from what seemed to be upper management, particularly a woman who moved through the office with quiet authority. She wore simple business attire and kept to herself, but something about her seemed familiar. Each time he caught a glimpse of her, she was engaged in careful observation of the office operations. Near the end of the day, as Ethan was gathering his things, he saw her again. This time, he got a clearer view. It was Grace Whitmore, the woman he'd helped on the road. She was speaking softly with Jennifer in a corner, gesturing toward some documents. Ethan frowned, his mind working to connect the dots. Before he could process this unexpected sight, Ben appeared at his elbow. "First day went well, wouldn't you say?" the older man asked, drawing Ethan's attention away. "Yeah, it did," Ethan replied, glancing back toward where Grace had been standing, but she was already gone. "It really did." Ben patted his shoulder. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's another day to do good work." As Ethan walked to his truck, he couldn't shake the image of Grace in the office. Something was going on, but he couldn't quite figure out what. Still, the warm satisfaction of a productive day outweighed his curiosity. For the first time in weeks, he felt truly hopeful about the future. He pulled out his phone to call Lily's after-school program. "Hey, sweetie, I'm on my way." "Wait till you hear about my first day." The office hummed with nervous energy as word spread throughout the morning about an unexpected corporate evaluation. Employees whispered in clusters near the water cooler, straightening their ties and smoothing their blouses. The air felt charged with anticipation and mild panic, the kind that comes when upper management makes surprise visits. Ethan sat at his desk in the corner, methodically reviewing delivery route proposals spread across his workspace. His fingers traced the colored lines on the city map, calculating efficiency improvements and cost savings. The familiar rhythm of problem-solving calmed him, a welcome distraction from the office's collective anxiety. When the elevator doors opened with their familiar chime, he glanced up out of habit. His heart skipped a beat as Grace stepped out, her heels clicking confidently against the polished floor. She was dressed in a sleek navy suit that commanded immediate respect, her pregnancy more visible now beneath the tailored jacket. A leather portfolio was tucked under her arm, and she wore the practiced, neutral expression of a seasoned corporate auditor, distant, analytical, professionally untouchable. But Ethan knew better. He could see the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way she held her chin just a fraction higher than usual. This was Grace in full executive armor, playing a role she'd perfected over years of boardroom battles. There, eyes met across the bustling office space, past the maze of cubicles and busy colleagues. Grace's composed facade cracked for just a moment, like ice beginning to thaw. She fought back a smile, her lips twitching with barely contained amusement. Ethan shook his head slightly, understanding dawning on his face as the pieces clicked into place. Of course, it was her. He should have seen this coming. Jennifer hurried over from her desk, her nervous energy palpable as she smoothed her blazer and checked her hair in the reflection of a nearby computer screen. She greeted the supposed auditor with the kind of eager professionalism reserved for corporate visits. "Welcome to our facility. We're absolutely honored to have you here to evaluate our pilot program. I hope your flight was comfortable." "Thank you for your warm welcome," Grace replied formally, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of executives. Though her tone was perfectly professional, her eyes sparkled with barely concealed amusement. "I'd like to start by speaking with your new logistics consultant. I understand he's been making quite an impression." At his desk, Ethan stood up slowly as they approached, his chair rolling back slightly. He straightened his tie, a simple blue one Lily had picked out because she said it matched his eyes. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. Here was the woman whose life he'd helped change, now pretending to be a stranger, evaluating his work. Jennifer made the introductions with obvious pride, completely unaware of their previous connection. Her voice carried the enthusiasm of someone showing off their department's prize recruit. This is Ethan Cole, our newest team member. He's already making quite an impact with his innovative approaches to logistics efficiency. His ideas about community outreach have really impressed everyone." "Is that so?" Grace asked, extending her hand with corporate precision. Her fingers were warm against his, and for just a moment, her professional mask slipped. The handshake lingered a beat longer than necessary. The moment Jennifer stepped away to gather some files, they both burst into quiet laughter, the kind of suppressed giggles that happen in libraries or church services. Ethan covered his mouth with his hand, his shoulders shaking slightly. "I should have known," Ethan said, shaking his head in amazement. "The mysterious corporate visitor people kept mentioning all week. Ben even asked if I thought they were coming to shut down the program." Grace's professional mask dissolved completely, replaced by the genuine warmth he remembered from their coffee meetings. Her whole posture relaxed, shoulders dropping from their rigid corporate stance. "I had to see how you were settling in. The reports I've been getting are remarkable, but I wanted to see it with my own eyes." She paused, her smile turning mischievous. "Would you join me for lunch? To discuss your performance evaluation, of course." They found a quiet corner table at a nearby cafe, one of those cozy places with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. The lunch crowd buzzed around them, providing perfect cover for their conversation. The formal pretense dropped completely as Grace relaxed into her chair, removing her suit jacket and folding it carefully over the back of her seat. "So," she said, stirring honey into her herbal tea, the spoon clinking gently against the ceramic, "how are you really doing? And I want the truth, not the corporate-friendly version." Ethan considered the question carefully, rolling his napkin between his fingers. Through the window beside them, he could see people hurrying along the sidewalk, each lost in their own daily struggles and triumphs. "It's different. Good, different. The work actually matters here. We're not just pushing numbers around on spreadsheets or trying to squeeze an extra dollar out of delivery routes. We're genuinely helping people make their lives a little easier." "I've heard wonderful things about your ideas," Grace said, leaning forward with genuine interest. The mobile food pantry concept particularly impressed the regional managers. "Tell me how you came up with it." "That was just common sense," Ethan replied modestly, his voice taking on the quiet passion he reserved for topics close to his heart. "I used to see elderly folks on my old delivery routes, struggling to carry heavy grocery bags up 3 flights of stairs to their apartments. Their hands would shake from arthritis, but they'd refuse help because they didn't want to be a burden." He paused, his eyes growing distant with memory. They needed the help, but couldn't always get to the food banks across town. "Transportation is expensive when you're on a fixed income." Grace watched him speak, noting how his entire demeanor changed when discussing ways to help others. His usual quiet reserve melted away, replaced by an animated energy that made his eyes light up. She found herself leaning closer, drawn in by his genuine passion for making a difference. "You see things others miss," she observed quietly. Most people would just see delivery routes and efficiency metrics. Their conversation gradually shifted to more personal matters, the easy flow of two people who'd found an unexpected friendship. Ethan spoke about Lily's recent school art show, his pride evident as he described her painting of a rainbow over their apartment building. "She told me it was to make sure everyone in our neighborhood had something beautiful to look at," he said, pulling out his phone to show Grace the photo. Grace shared her growing anxieties about impending motherhood, her hand unconsciously resting on her expanding belly. "I keep thinking about what kind of example I want to set," she admitted, her voice softer now, more vulnerable. "My father built this company on strong values, treating employees like family, serving communities, not just shareholders. But somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that. I'm afraid I've lost sight of who I wanted to be." "It's never too late to course correct," Ethan said gently, his voice carrying the quiet wisdom of someone who'd faced his own crossroads. "Look at me starting over at 42 with an 8-year-old daughter, no safety net, and more questions than answers. But sometimes starting over gives you the chance to get it right this time." Back at the office, Grace observed Ethan in his natural element, watching him work with the quiet attention of someone taking mental notes. She noticed how he paused his route optimization project to help Ben, the elderly colleague, troubleshoot a computer issue. His patience was remarkable as he guided Ben through each step, never showing the slightest hint of impatience or condescension. Later, she watched him notice the evening cleaning staff struggling with a heavy recycling bin that had gotten stuck in a doorway. Without a second thought, Ethan immediately stepped in to help, working alongside them to free the bin and then assisting with the rest of their cart. He chatted easily with them in both English and Spanish, asking about their families and remembering details from previous conversations. These small acts of kindness weren't performed for an audience or calculated for effect. They were simply Ethan being Ethan, the same man who'd stopped to help a pregnant stranger in the rain without thought of reward or recognition. Grace found herself thinking of her father, remembering how he used to know every employee's name, how he'd roll up his sleeves to help in the warehouse during busy seasons. Throughout the afternoon, they found themselves naturally gravitating toward each other during group discussions about supply chain improvements and community partnership opportunities. Their dynamic was comfortable and collaborative, marked by shared glances of understanding when someone made a particularly insightful point and half-hidden smiles when the conversation took an amusing turn. There was no hint of romance or impropriety, just the quiet recognition of two kindred spirits who understood each other's values. As the workday drew to a close and the office began to empty, Grace prepared to leave. She gathered her portfolio and slipped her suit jacket back on, transforming once again into the polished executive who'd arrived that morning. Ethan walked her to the elevator, carefully timing their departure to avoid curious onlookers who might wonder why the new consultant was getting such personalized attention from the corporate auditor. "Thank you," he said simply as they waited for the elevator, his voice carrying depths of meaning that went far beyond the surface words. "For giving me this chance. For believing I could contribute something worthwhile." Grace smiled, her hand absently touching the delicate gold necklace at her throat, a habit Ethan had noticed during their previous meetings when she was thinking deeply about something important. "Maybe we meet certain people for a reason," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the office's background hum. "Maybe they come into our lives exactly when we need them most." Ethan nodded, understanding flickering in his warm brown eyes. The elevator arrived with a soft ding, and as the doors began to slide open, he added quietly, "Maybe we're all part of each other's lessons, helping each other find our way back to who we're supposed to be." As Grace stepped into the elevator and the doors closed between them, both carried with them the comfortable certainty that their paths would continue to interweave in ways neither of them could yet fully imagine. Sunlight dappled through the maple trees at Harrison Park, casting dancing shadows on the calm pond water. Ethan sat on a weathered wooden bench, watching Lily toss bits of bread to an eager group of ducks. Her giggles echoed across the water as the birds waddled and quacked, competing for each morsel. "Not too close to the edge, sweetheart," Ethan called out, smiling at his daughter's joy. These Saturday morning duck feeding sessions had become their special ritual since Laura passed. Something about the peaceful routine helped heal both their hearts. "Daddy, look, the baby duck got some." Lily bounced on her toes, her pink sneakers getting slightly muddy at the water's edge. A familiar voice came from behind them. "Mind if I join you?" Ethan turned to find Grace standing there in casual weekend clothes, jeans and a loose sweater that draped softly over her growing belly. She looked different outside the office, more approachable somehow. "Grace!" Lily exclaimed before Ethan could respond. "Do you want to feed the ducks with us? We have extra bread." "I'd love to," Grace said, easing herself onto the bench beside Ethan. "I was just in the neighborhood and saw you both here." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Just in the neighborhood?" The park was a good 20 minutes from the city center. Grace's cheeks colored slightly. "Well, maybe I needed a break from endless paperwork. This seemed like a nicer way to spend a Saturday morning." Lily rushed over and thrust a piece of bread into Grace's hands. "Here." The mama duck likes the small pieces best. As Grace tore the bread into tiny bits, Lily settled cross-legged at their feet, pulling her ever-present sketchbook from her little backpack. "Want to see my drawings? I made lots of new ones." "I'd love to," Grace said warmly, leaning forward despite her belly making it awkward. Lily flipped through pages filled with crayon drawings. Their cat sleeping in a sunbeam, the view from her bedroom window, stick figures of her and her dad at the grocery store. Then she paused at a page that made Ethan's throat tighten. It showed 3 figures, a tall man, a small girl, and a woman with wings and a halo. "That's me and Daddy," Lily explained matter-of-factly, "and that's Mommy in heaven, watching us." Grace's hand found Ethan's arm and squeezed gently. "It's beautiful, Lily. Your mom must be so proud of your artwork." "Daddy says she was good at drawing, too. He keeps all her old sketches in a special box." Lily turned another page. "This is our house, and our neighbor Mrs. Peterson and her funny dog." As Lily continued showing her art, Grace glanced at Ethan. His eyes were fixed on the pond, but she could see the emotion he was trying to contain. "How long?" she began softly. 2 years next month, he answered, still watching the water. "Cancer. It happened so fast. By the time they caught it." He shook his head. "I'm so sorry," Grace whispered. The hardest part was explaining it to Lily. How do you tell a 6-year-old that her mom, he swallowed hard. But kids are amazing, you know? They have this capacity for hope that adults sometimes lose. Lily taught me how to keep going, keep believing things would get better. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by Lily's running commentary about her drawings and the occasional splash from the pond. "What was she like?" Grace asked finally. "Laura?" A genuine smile crossed Ethan's face. "She was light. That's the best way I can describe her. She could walk into a room and just make everyone feel better, more hopeful. She volunteered at the children's hospital, drew pictures for the kids there, said everyone deserves a reason to smile." "Like father, like daughter," Grace observed, watching Lily sketch another duck. "She'd have loved you," Lily piped up suddenly, making both adults start. "Mommy always liked kind people. And you're kind. You smile with your eyes, just like she did." Grace blinked rapidly, touched by the child's simple wisdom. She watched as Ethan pulled Lily into a quick hug, kissing the top of her head. "You've done an amazing job with her," Grace said softly when Lily returned to her drawing. "It couldn't have been easy, doing it alone." "Some days are, harder than others," Ethan admitted, "but we have faith. Laura always said that as long as we remember to be kind, to help others when we can, good things will find their way back to us." He smiled. "Though I admit, I questioned that theory the day I got fired." "And now?" Grace asked. "Now?" He looked at her thoughtfully. "Now, I think maybe she was right after all." A duck waddled close to Lily, making her laugh in delight. She offered it a piece of bread, then carefully began sketching its features in her book. "She has such a gentle soul," Grace observed, one hand resting on her belly. "You both do. It's rare to find that these days, people who help others without expecting anything in return." "The world's not as dark as people think," Ethan said. "Sometimes we just need to be reminded of the good in it." They spent another hour at the park, talking easily about everything and nothing. Lily showed Grace how to make the perfect-sized bread pieces for the ducks, and Grace taught Lily how to draw simple flowers in the margins of her sketchbook. When the bread was gone and the sun climbed higher in the sky, they knew it was time to part ways. As Ethan helped Grace to her feet, Lily wrapped her arms around Grace's legs in an impulsive hug. "Will you come feed the ducks with us again?" she asked hopefully. "I'd like that very much," Grace replied, smoothing Lily's hair. As Ethan gathered their things, Grace stood for a moment watching father and daughter together. She placed a hand on her rounded belly, feeling a flutter of movement within. "You're lucky, little one," she whispered. "The world still has good men." Over the next month, autumn painted the town in warm colors as Ethan settled into his expanding role at work. What had started as a consulting position grew naturally into something more substantial. His practical experience and genuine concern for others caught the attention of upper management, and soon he found himself leading a small team focused on improving store operations and employee relations. The modest office they gave him felt strange at first, a step up from his old supervisor desk. A few personal touches made it feel more like home. Lily's drawing of him with angel wings, proudly framed on the wall, and a small photo of Laura on his desk, her smile still brightening his darkest days. His team consisted of 5 people, each bringing their own strengths to the table. There was Maria from accounting, sharp with numbers but shy, Tom from operations, always ready with a joke, Sarah from HR, whose kindness matched her efficiency, and 2 younger analysts, fresh from college, eager to learn and full of innovative ideas. Grace made periodic visits to various store locations, though few recognized her as the CEO. She preferred to observe quietly, dress simply, blending in with the regular corporate visitors. Her growing belly made these incognito trips increasingly challenging, but she persisted, drawn to watching how Ethan's influence spread through the organization. During one such visit, she witnessed firsthand how Ethan handled a delicate situation. Martha Wilson, a 65-year-old cashier who'd worked at Freshmart for over 2 decades, was struggling with the new digital payment system. The local manager was pushing for her termination, citing efficiency concerns. Ethan happened to be there that day, reviewing store procedures. He overheard Martha's distress in the break room and approached her gently. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm Ethan Cole. Mind if we talk for a minute?" Grace watched from near the dairy section, pretending to check inventory reports, as Ethan sat with Martha for over an hour. He listened to her stories about her grandchildren, about her late husband who'd worked in the same store, about her fears of not being able to pay her mortgage if she lost this job. Instead of simply accepting the situation, Ethan developed a solution. He worked with his team to create a buddy system, pairing experienced cashiers with those who needed extra support with new technology. Martha's decades of customer service experience made her an ideal mentor for new hires, teaching them the personal touch that no computer could replace. The program was an immediate success. Customer satisfaction scores rose, and employee turnover dropped. Other store managers began requesting similar initiatives, and soon Ethan's team was developing training materials for the entire district. Grace noticed other small changes too. Ethan instituted a community corner in each store he oversaw, a bulletin board where local families could post needs or offers of help. He encouraged managers to donate near-expiration food to local shelters instead of throwing it away. His team created a simple system for employees to swap shifts easily, making it easier for parents to attend their children's school events. One Tuesday afternoon, Grace stopped by Ethan's office unannounced. She found him on the phone, talking softly with someone about flexible scheduling options. When he hung up, he explained it was a single mother struggling to balance work with her son's medical appointments. "You know," Grace said, settling carefully into a chair, her pregnancy making every movement more deliberate now. "When I first created this position, I wasn't sure exactly what it would become." Ethan smiled modestly. "Sometimes the best plans are the ones that grow naturally." "Like your community initiatives," Grace nodded. "The board's noticed, you know. Customer loyalty is up 15% in stores where you've implemented your programs." "It's not really about the numbers," Ethan said, then caught himself. "Though I'm glad they're good," Grace laughed. "That's exactly why it works. Because for you, it's about the people first." Later that week, Grace sat in her executive office, reviewing the latest quarterly reports. The numbers told a clear story. Stores under Ethan's influence were outperforming others, not just in customer satisfaction, but in employee retention and even profit margins. Kindness, it seemed, was good business. She pressed the intercom button. "Susan, please schedule a full board meeting for tomorrow morning, and bring me all the files on our current community outreach programs." Her assistant appeared in the doorway moments later, notepad ready. "Any particular focus for the meeting, Miss Whitmore?" Grace stood up slowly, one hand resting on her belly as she walked to the window. The late afternoon sun caught the changing leaves outside, making them glow like embers. She thought about Martha Wilson, still greeting customers with a warm smile, about the single mother who wouldn't have to choose between her job and her child's health, about Ethan, who never sought recognition but whose quiet influence was transforming the company one small act of kindness at a time. "Yes," she said firmly. "Tell them we're going to discuss the future of Freshmart. It's time to make some changes." The next morning, Grace stood before the board in the executive conference room, her presentation ready. The men and women around the table watched expectantly as she took her place at the head of the long mahogany table. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and confident, "we're here to talk about more than quarterly projections. We're here to discuss the soul of this company." She paused, making eye contact with each board member. "We're going to make Freshmart about more than profit. Let's make it about people." The Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom sparkled with tiny lights and silver decorations. Round tables draped in cream-colored linens filled the space, each one crowned with a centerpiece of white roses and baby's breath. The annual New Beginnings charity banquet for expectant mothers had drawn hundreds of guests, filling the elegant room with cheerful chatter and warm energy. Ethan adjusted his borrowed tie, feeling out of place among the well-dressed crowd. Beside him, 8-year-old Lily bounced excitedly in her favorite blue dress, her eyes wide at the fancy surroundings. "Dad, look at all the pretty lights," she whispered, pointing at the crystal chandeliers overhead. "I see them, sweetheart." Ethan smiled, squeezing her small hand. He still wasn't sure why Grace had insisted they come tonight. The invitation had arrived at his office last week, along with a handwritten note asking them to be her special guest. A familiar voice called out behind them, "You both look wonderful." Grace approached, wearing a flowing navy dress that complemented her 6-month baby bump. Her face glowed with happiness as she hugged Lily and touched Ethan's arm in greeting. "This is quite something," Ethan said, gesturing at the elaborate setup. "We feel a little underdressed." Grace shook her head. "You're perfect just as you are. Come on, you're sitting at my table." She led them through the crowd, stopping occasionally to greet other guests. Lily skipped alongside them, fascinated by all the round bellies and elegant dresses. Their table was near the front, with an excellent view of the podium. As they settled in, Grace introduced them to the other guests, doctors, social workers, and community leaders who worked with expectant mothers in need. Ethan relaxed slightly as conversation flowed easily, focusing on the good work being done in their community. After dinner, the program began. Various speakers shared stories of hope and transformation, but the room grew especially quiet when Grace stood to deliver the keynote address. She moved to the podium with natural grace, her presence commanding attention without demanding it. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice warm and clear. "Tonight, we're here to celebrate new beginnings, not just the miracle of new life, but the power of compassion to change lives." She paused, her hand resting gently on her belly. "I'd like to share a story with you about kindness and how one simple act can ripple out to touch countless lives." Ethan's heart skipped a beat as Grace described that rainy morning, the flat tire, the mounting panic, and the stranger who stopped when no one else would. She didn't name him, but her words painted a vivid picture of that day. "This man," she continued, "had every reason to drive past. He was late for an important meeting, the rain was getting worse, but he chose to stop to help a stranger in need." Her voice grew soft with emotion. "What he didn't know was that I had a high-risk pregnancy, and missing that doctor's appointment could have been dangerous for my baby." Lily grabbed Ethan's hand under the table, her eyes shining with pride. Around them, people listened intently, some dabbing at their eyes. "That man lost his job that day because he stopped to help me," Grace revealed, causing murmurs of dismay through the crowd. "But his kindness didn't just save my appointment. It reminded me what truly matters in this world. It showed me the kind of person I wanted to be, the kind of company I wanted to lead, and the type of world I want my child to grow up in." She took a deep breath, her eyes finding Ethan's in the crowd. "That man is here tonight, and I'd like him to stand. Ethan Cole, would you please rise?" The spotlight found him as he slowly stood, his cheeks flushing. Lily bounced up beside him, beaming with pride. "This is the man who taught me that true success isn't measured in profits or promotions, but in the lives we touch and the kindness we share." Grace's voice carried clear emotion now. His 8-year-old daughter drew him with angel wings, and she was right. Sometimes angels wear rain-soaked work clothes and drive old pickup trucks. The room erupted in applause. Ethan stood there, overwhelmed by the moment, as Lily hugged his waist tightly. For the first time since losing his job, he felt completely proud of his choice that morning. The tears in his eyes matched those he saw in many faces around the room. After the ceremony, guests mingled in the hotel's garden terrace. Fairy lights twinkled in the trees, creating a magical atmosphere. Lily twirled under the lights, her dress spinning like a blue flower. Grace found Ethan watching his daughter from a quiet corner. She joined him, both of them content to share the peaceful moment. "Thank you," Ethan said simply, his voice still rough with emotion. "Not just for tonight, but for everything." Grace smiled softly, watching Lily dance. "Thank you for reminding me what matters." Sometimes we all need someone to show us the way back to who we really are. They stood in comfortable silence, the fairy lights casting a gentle glow around them. Lily's laughter rang out as she continued her joyful spins, her happiness a perfect counterpoint to the quiet understanding that had grown between the adults watching her. The evening air was cool but not cold, carrying the sweet scent of nearby flowering jasmine. Around them, other guests chatted and laughed, but this corner of the garden felt like their own peaceful world, a moment of pure contentment captured in the soft glow of twinkling lights. Martin Dempsey's morning routine never varied. Black coffee, 2 sugars, and the local news website open on his tablet. But today, something made him choke on his perfectly measured sip. There, splashed across the screen, was a face he knew all too well, Ethan Cole. The article's headline glowed mockingly. "Local hero inspires CEO's vision for corporate change." Dempsey's fingers trembled as he scrolled through the story, his face growing redder with each paragraph. "This can't be right," he muttered. setting his coffee down with enough force to slosh liquid onto his pristine desk calendar. The article detailed last night's charity event, praising Ethan's selfless act of kindness that had apparently caught the attention of Grace Whitmore herself. Dempsey pulled up his email, fingers stabbing at the keyboard as he searched through old correspondence. There it was, his own report recommending Ethan's termination. He felt so righteous that day, so certain he was maintaining proper standards. Now that same man was being celebrated by the company's CEO. "Roberts," he barked, and his assistant scurried in. "Give me everything you can find about Ethan Cole's new position. Everything." As Roberts hurried away, Dempsey opened another browser tab and began his own research. LinkedIn profiles, company announcements, social media. Anything that might explain how a fired delivery supervisor had somehow wormed his way into corporate's good graces. Hours passed. His coffee went cold. The stack of papers on his desk grew, ignored, while his computer screen filled with tabs. Then he found it. A small detail that made his heart race. The consulting firm that hired Ethan? A subsidiary of Whitmore Holdings. "Too perfect," Dempsey whispered, leaning back in his chair. "Too neat." He remembered Sarah Chen, the lifestyle blogger who'd once written a scathing piece about store management after he'd refused her expired coupon. She'd given him her card, saying she was always interested in corporate drama. His hand shook slightly as he dug through his desk drawer, finding the crumpled business card. The phone rang 3 times before a sharp voice answered. Sarah Chen speaking. "Miss Chen? Martin Dempsey here, from Freshmart." He cleared his throat. "Remember that rain check on a story? I think I have something you'd find interesting." Across town, Grace sat in her sunlit office, reviewing quarterly reports. A slight flutter in her belly made her smile and rest a hand on her growing bump. The charity event had been a success, better than she'd hoped. Seeing Ethan recognized, watching his daughter beam with pride, it had felt right. Her assistant knocked softly. "Miss Whitmore, your 2 o'clock is here." "Send him in," Grace said, straightening papers on her desk. Ethan entered, carrying a folder of community outreach proposals. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, his genuine concern making her smile. "Not at all. These numbers can wait." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Tell me about your ideas." They spent the next hour discussing programs for elderly shoppers, single-parent support initiatives, and local food banks. Grace found herself leaning forward, caught up in his enthusiasm and practical compassion. "You really see people, don't you?" she said during a pause. "Not just problems to solve, but actual people." Ethan looked down, modest as always. "My wife used to say that. She said everyone has a story if you just take time to listen." A comfortable silence fell between them. Grace felt that familiar warmth in her chest, the one that appeared whenever Ethan spoke about Laura. There was no bitterness in his grief, only gentle remembrance. "The board meeting's next week," Grace said finally. "Would you present these proposals yourself? They'll mean more coming from you." "Are you sure that's appropriate?" Ethan asked. "I mean, given my position." "You're the best person for this?" Grace insisted. "Trust me." Outside her office window, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city. Neither of them noticed the maintenance worker changing a light bulb in the hallway or the small camera hidden in his tool belt. As they wrapped up their meeting, Grace walked Ethan to the elevator. They were discussing final details for the presentation when a flash briefly lit the corridor. Both turned, but the maintenance worker was already around the corner, whistling as he pushed his cart toward the stairs. "Must be the new lighting?" Grace said, shrugging it off. "Probably," Ethan agreed. "Same time next week then?" "Looking forward to it." Grace smiled, watching the elevator doors close. She returned to her office, that strange moment already forgotten. Outside, the maintenance worker hurried down, 17 flights of stairs, clutching his phone with sweaty hands. On its screen, a perfect shot. The company's pregnant CEO and her former employee, caught in what looked like an intimate conversation. In his office across town, Martin Dempsey's phone buzzed. A new email from Sarah Chen contained just 4 words. "Got exactly what we need. CEO's secret favor for fired employee." The headline blazed across computer screens and phones throughout Freshmart's corporate offices. The story spread like wildfire through social media, each share adding new layers of speculation and innuendo. Ethan first saw it when his phone started buzzing non-stop during his lunch break. Text messages from coworkers, each containing links to various news sites. His stomach dropped as he read the first article. Sources claim Grace Whitmore, CEO of Fresh Mart Stores, orchestrated an elaborate scheme to rehire a terminated employee after a chance roadside encounter. Questions arise about the nature of their relationship and potential misuse of corporate resources. The break room, usually filled with friendly chatter, fell silent when he walked in. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People suddenly found their phones fascinating. Ben, his mentor, gave him a sympathetic look but kept his distance. "Hey, Cole," someone called out. "Must be nice having friends in high places." The comment dripped with sarcasm. Ethan's sandwich sat untouched as he scrolled through more articles. Each one twisted his simple act of kindness into something suspicious. They painted Grace as either naive or compromised, and him as an opportunist who had somehow manipulated his way into her good graces. Up in the executive floor, Grace faced her own storm. The board members had called an emergency meeting, their faces grave as they sat around the mahogany table. "This is a PR nightmare," declared Harrison Wells, the eldest board member. He slapped a stack of printouts onto the table. "Social media is having a rend. Field day. Our stock has already dropped 3 points." Grace sat straight-backed in her chair, one hand protectively over her growing belly. "It's being blown completely out of proportion," she said firmly. "I helped someone who showed genuine kindness. There's nothing improper about it." "The optics are terrible," Patricia Chen, another board member, cut in. "A pregnant CEO, a widowed father. The tabloids are writing their own story. We need to contain this immediately." "We suggest you take a temporary leave," Wells continued, his tone leaving little room for discussion. "Just until our internal review is complete, to show we're taking these allegations seriously." Grace's cheeks flushed with anger. Allegations of what exactly? Recognizing human decency? Making ethical business decisions? "Grace," Patricia leaned forward, her voice softening. "Think of the company. Think of your father's legacy." Back in his department, Ethan watched as his carefully rebuilt world began crumbling again. His team members avoided eye contact during meetings. Projects he'd been leading were quietly reassigned. The whispers followed him down every hallway. He thought of Lily's drawing, "Daddy helps people," now seeming like a cruel joke. He'd tried to do the right thing, and somehow it had backfired spectacularly, threatening not only his own position, but Grace's as well. That evening, after most employees had left, Ethan took the elevator to the executive floor. His resignation letter felt heavy in his pocket. Grace's assistant tried to stop him, but he heard Grace's voice from inside her office. "Let him in, Sarah." Grace stood by her window, silhouetted against the setting Sunday. She looked tired but resolute. "I know why you're here," she said before he could speak. "The answer is no." Ethan pulled out the envelope anyway. "You have to let me resign. I can't let you lose everything you've built because of me." "Because of you?" Grace turned, her eyes flashing. "Because you stopped to help a pregnant woman in distress? Because you showed more integrity in that one moment than most people show in a lifetime?" The board needs to remember what this company stands for," she interrupted. "My father built Fresh Mart on values, not just profits. He would have done exactly what you did." Ethan stepped forward, placing the envelope on her desk. "I'm not worth this fight, Grace. Your company, your reputation, don't." Grace's voice cracked slightly. Tears welled in her eyes as she grabbed the envelope and tore it in half. "Don't you dare make me regret helping you." The torn pieces of his resignation letter fluttered to the floor between them. They stood in silence as the last rays of sunlight painted the office in shades of gold and shadow. Two good people caught in a storm neither had seen coming. Note, this scene concludes exactly as requested, with Grace's line, "Don't you dare make me regret helping you," and shows all the core events: media scandal, co-workers growing distant, board pressure on Grace, and Ethan's attempted resignation. A week had passed since the scandal broke, and the autumn rain seemed determined to match everyone's mood. Ethan sat in his old pickup truck, now back to making deliveries at a smaller grocery store across town. The familiar weight of boxes and daily routes offered little comfort, but at least it was honest work. He checked his phone during his lunch break, no messages from Grace. She had withdrawn completely from public view, her usually active social media account silent. The tabloids were having a field day with her absence, spinning wild theories about corporate corruption and secret relationships. The cab of his truck felt especially lonely today. The empty passenger seat reminded him of their conversations, of Grace's genuine interest in his ideas about improving the company. Now those dreams lay scattered like fallen leaves in the parking lot. Back at home that evening, Ethan tried to maintain a brave face for Lily. She sat at their small kitchen table, pushing peas around her plate with her fork. Her small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, why doesn't Miss Grace come to see us anymore? Did we do something wrong?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Ethan set down his own fork, searching for words that wouldn't come. How could he explain corporate politics and media scandals to an 8-year-old who saw the world in simple terms of right and wrong? "No, sweetheart," he finally managed. "We didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-up things get complicated." "But she was our friend," Lily insisted, her lower lip trembling slightly. "She liked my drawings. And she always smiled when you talked." Ethan reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's hand. "I know, honey. I miss her too." Across town, in her elegant penthouse apartment, Grace paced the floor in her pajamas. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed nights of restless sleep. Her phone lay face down on the coffee table. She couldn't bear to look at another notification. The TV murmured in the background, providing white noise to fill the emptiness. Her hand rested on her growing belly as she paused by the window. The city lights blurred through the rain-streaked glass. The board had strongly suggested she take a leave of absence while they investigated the situation. Investigation as if helping a good man was some kind of crime. Grace's assistant had dropped off another stack of papers earlier. More media requests, letters from shareholders, and a preliminary report from the company's PR team. They all sat untouched on her kitchen counter. She couldn't focus on any of it. Her thoughts kept drifting to Ethan and Lily, to their Saturday mornings in the park, to Lily's infectious laugh, to Ethan's quiet strength. She missed them. The realization hit her with surprising force. In trying to protect her company's reputation, she'd lost something far more valuable: genuine friendship. In his modest apartment, Ethan tucked Lily into bed, smoothing her blanket just the way she liked it. Her room was a collage of crayon drawings, including several of Grace. In one, they were all feeding ducks together. In another, Grace stood beside Ethan, both wearing angel wings like in the original drawing. "Can we pray for Miss Grace?" Lily asked sleepily. "Like we pray for Mommy?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Of course we can, sweetheart." They knelt together beside Lily's small bed, hands clasped. Lily's stuffed giraffe watched from its place on her pillow. "Dear God," Lily began, her voice small but clear, "please take care of Miss Grace and her baby. She's really nice, and Daddy says nice people shouldn't be sad." Ethan closed his eyes, his own prayer joining his daughter's. "Please help Miss Grace find peace, like you helped us." His voice wavered slightly on the last words. Lily squeezed his hand. "Amen. Amen," Ethan echoed, kissing her forehead. Later that night, in his own room, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed. Laura's picture smiled at him from the nightstand. She would have known exactly what to do in this situation. She always did. The rain continued its gentle pattern against the windows. Somewhere in the same city, Grace was probably still awake too, carrying the weight of protecting her company's reputation. He wished he could tell her that her kindness hadn't been a mistake, that doing the right thing was never wrong, even when it hurt. In her penthouse, Grace finally settled onto her couch, wrapping herself in a soft throw blanket. Her phone screen lit up with another news alert, but she ignored it. Instead, she pulled out Lily's latest drawing from her purse, a simple scene of 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright Sunday. On the back, in careful child's handwriting, it read, "For Miss Grace, from Lily and Daddy too." A tear splashed onto the paper. Grace quickly wiped it away, careful not to, smudged the crayon. She had fought so hard to prove herself in the corporate world, to show she was more than just her father's daughter. Now she wondered if, in the process, she'd forgotten what her father had always taught her about the true measure of success, not in profits, but in how many lives you touched. The rain kept falling, connecting their separate vigils with its steady rhythm. In 2 different parts of the city, 2 people who had tried to do the right thing lay awake, each wondering if the other was doing the same, each carrying the weight of unspoken words and interrupted dreams. Grace Whitmore opened her eyes before her alarm could sound, the pale morning light filtering through her penthouse windows. For the first time in days, her mind felt crystal clear. She pressed a hand to her growing belly, feeling the gentle movement within. "We're done hiding," she whispered, both to herself and her unborn child. She padded across the plush carpet to her desk, still wearing her silk pajamas, and opened her laptop. The screen filled with news headlines, each more sensational than the last. Freshmart scandal, CEO's secret relationship? Grace Whitmore, power, privilege, and favoritism. Board demands answers as CEO remains silent. Grace ignored them all. Instead, she opened a blank document and began to type. The words flowed easily now, straight from her heart. No corporate jargon, no carefully crafted PR statements, just truth. Her assistant, Maria, arrived an hour later to find Grace still writing, now dressed in a simple blue dress that highlighted her pregnancy rather than hiding it. Miss Whitmore, the PR team is waiting in the conference room. They've prepared a statement. Cancel it, Grace said without looking up. And call a press conference for noon today. Maria's eyes widened. But they specifically advised against. I know what they advised. Grace finally looked up, her expression serene. And I'm done letting others tell my story. Please make the arrangements. As Maria hurried out, Grace's phone buzzed. It was a message from one of her board members. Think carefully about your next move. Your father's legacy is at stake. Grace touched the small photo of her father on her desk. I'm thinking about his legacy, she murmured. That's exactly why I'm doing this. Across town, Ethan was making breakfast when his phone lit up with a news alert. Lily peered over his shoulder, her cereal forgotten. Daddy, isn't that Miss Grace? Ethan read the notification. Breaking. Whitmore Holdings CEO to hold press conference at noon. His heart thumped. He knew Grace well enough now to recognize when she was about to do something bold, something that could either save or destroy everything. Can we watch it? Lily asked, her eyes bright with hope. She missed Grace. They both did. Ethan glanced at his delivery schedule, then at his daughter's pleading face. Yes, sweetheart, we can watch it. Back at Whitmore Holdings, Grace's office had become a war room. Her PR team, legal advisors, and several board members had arrived uninvited, all trying to talk her out of the press conference. Miss Whitmore, please, her head of PR begged, let us handle this our way. A carefully worded statement, like the ones that have kept us hiding for a week, Grace interrupted, her voice firm but kind. The ones that make us look guilty of something when we've done nothing wrong? The optics, another advisor began, are exactly what's wrong with corporate culture today. Grace finished. She stood, one hand resting on her belly. We've forgotten what matters. My father built this company on trust and integrity, on helping people. When did we start punishing kindness? The room fell silent. Grace picked up her speech, handwritten now, after several revisions, and walked toward the door. Miss Whitmore, her legal counsel called after her, at least let us review the statement first. Grace smiled softly. No, this isn't a statement. This is my truth. At 11:55, Ethan and Lily sat on their worn couch. The TV turned to the local news. Lily clutched her latest drawing, another angel, but this time it was Grace with the wings. Will this make everything better, Daddy? She asked. Ethan pulled her close. I don't know, sweetheart, but Miss Grace is very brave for trying. The news showed the gathering crowd outside Whitmore Holdings. Reporters jostled for position, cameras ready. The podium stood empty, microphones clustered like metal flowers. In the building's executive elevator, Grace stood alone, her speech in her hands. She thought of Ethan, of his simple act of kindness that rainy morning, how he'd stopped to help without knowing who she was or what it might cost him. She thought of her father, who'd always said, do what's right, Grace, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The elevator doors opened to the main lobby. Grace could see the glass doors ahead, behind which the media waited. Her heels clicked steadily on the marble floor as she walked forward, head high. Security personnel moved to flank her. Through the glass, camera flashes began to strobe like lightning. Grace paused for just a moment, took a deep breath, and nodded to the guard to open the door. The noise hit her first, shouted questions, camera shutters, the murmur of the crowd. Grace walked steadily to the podium, her blue dress catching the autumn sunlight. She placed her speech on the wooden surface, looked up at the sea of faces and cameras, and prepared to tell her truth. Camera flashes burst like lightning as Grace Whitmore stepped up to the podium. Her navy blazer and cream blouse were perfectly pressed, but it was her steady gaze that commanded attention. The usual media circus had gathered, local news stations, business reporters, and even a few national networks. Their hungry eyes followed her every move, waiting for signs of weakness. But Grace wasn't afraid anymore. She adjusted the microphone, her hand brushing briefly against her rounded belly, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the photographers. The conference room at Freshmart's headquarters fell silent, save for the soft whir of cameras. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I've called this press conference to address the recent speculation about my leadership and the hiring practices at Freshmart." She paused, letting her words settle. "But, more importantly, I'm here to tell you a story about kindness." In his small apartment across town, Ethan sat on his worn couch, Lily curled against his side. The TV news anchor had just cut to the live feed. His throat felt tight as he watched Grace stand tall before the crowd. "2 months ago," Grace continued, "I was driving to an important prenatal appointment when my tire went flat on County Road 23. It was raining. I was alone. And I was scared." Her voice softened with emotion. "Car after car passed me by. Nobody stopped. Nobody helped." The reporters leaned forward, pens poised. Then a pickup truck pulled over. The driver didn't know who I was. He was just a good man who saw someone in need. Grace's eyes grew bright with tears, but her voice remained steady. "That man was Ethan Cole, and yes, the same Ethan Cole who later became our logistics consultant." Lily squeezed her father's hand. On screen, Grace took a deep breath. "What you don't know, what the leaked stories didn't tell you, is that Ethan lost his job that day because he stopped to help me." The room erupted in murmurs. He was late to an important meeting because he chose to change a stranger's tire in the rain. And for that act of kindness, he was fired on the spot. The cameras clicked frantically as Grace continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "When I learned what happened, I was horrified. Not just as the woman he helped, but as the CEO of the company that punished him for doing the right thing." She gripped the podium's edges. "Yes, I arranged for him to be hired as a consultant. And do you know what? It was the best decision I've made since taking over this company." In their apartment, Ethan watched in stunned silence as Grace detailed his contributions, the efficiency improvements, the employee support programs, the community initiatives he'd developed. "But here's what matters most," Grace said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Ethan Cole never knew who I was when he stopped to help me. He never asked for anything in return. When I offered him direct assistance, he refused it. His only concern was doing what was right." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "The media wants to paint this as a scandal. They want you to believe there's something improper about recognizing and rewarding genuine goodness. But I stand here today to tell you that I'm proud of helping Ethan Cole. I'm proud of every decision that led to this moment." Lily bounced on the couch. "You hear that, Daddy? She's proud of you." Grace's voice grew passionate. "In a world where we're taught to look the other way, to mind our own business, to put profit over people, Ethan Cole stopped to help a stranger. He represents everything Freshmart should stand for. Everything we all should stand for." The reporters were scribbling frantically now, but Grace wasn't finished. "So yes, I gave a job to the man who helped me that day, and I'd do it again. Because kindness should be rewarded, not punished. Compassion should be celebrated, not scandalized. And good people, truly good people, should never have to choose between doing what's right and keeping their jobs." Tears rolled down Ethan's cheeks as he watched. Lily wrapped her small arms around him, her own eyes shining. "I will not apologize for helping a good man who helped me," Grace declared. "I will not step down from my position, and I will not allow this company to forget its responsibility to the community it serves." She straightened her shoulders. "Starting today, Freshmart is launching a new initiative, one that recognizes and rewards acts of everyday kindness among our employees and in our communities." The room burst into applause, catching the reporters off guard. From the back, where employees had gathered to watch, the clapping grew louder. "Miss Grace told the truth, Daddy," Lily whispered, clapping along with the crowd on TV. "She told everyone what a good person you are." Ethan could only nod, wiping his eyes as he watched Grace stand strong before the flashing cameras, her face glowing with conviction. On screen, phones began lighting up the conference room as social media exploded with support. The board members, watching from their private viewing room, exchanged glances as their phones buzzed with overwhelming public approval. Number compassionate CEO and number kindness wins were already trending. Grace raised her hand for quiet one final time. "Thank you for your attention. I'll now take your questions, but first, I want to say one more thing." She smiled, her hand resting gently on her belly. To anyone watching who might be wondering if kindness is worth the cost, it always is. Always. The room erupted with questions, but Ethan didn't need to hear any more. He hugged Lily close, his heart full of gratitude for the woman who had chosen truth over convenience, courage over conformity. "She did it, baby girl," he whispered. "She really did it." The morning sun filtered through the windows of Freshmart's corporate headquarters, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Grace sat at the head of the boardroom table, her hands folded calmly over her growing belly as the board members filed in one by one. Their faces were different today. Gone were the stern frowns and disapproving glares, replaced by apologetic smiles and respectful nods. "The public response has been overwhelming," announced Marcus Chin, the head of PR, spreading newspapers across the table. "We've received thousands of supportive messages. Our stock is up 12 points. Grace merely nodded, her mind elsewhere. "And the board's decision?" "Unanimous vote for your reinstatement," said Barbara Wells, the eldest board member, pushing forward an official document. We may have lost sight of what this company was founded on. Your father would be proud of you, Grace." A small smile touched Grace's lips as she signed the paper. "Thank you." Now, about Mr. Cole's position. The door opened, and Ethan stepped in, wearing a fresh suit that still had the price tags removed just that morning. His eyes were wide, taking in the impressive room. Lily's drawing was carefully folded in his breast pocket, his lucky charm. "Mr. Cole," Grace stood, gesturing to an empty chair. "Please join us." Ethan sat down carefully, his work-roughened hands a stark contrast against the sleek conference table. "I appreciate you having me here, but I'm not sure I understand." Grace's eyes sparkled. "We're creating a new position, Director of Community Initiatives. The role will focus on developing programs that recognize and reward acts of kindness throughout our entire chain. We want you to lead it." Ethan's breath caught. He looked down at his hands, then around at the expectant faces. I don't have the education for something like this." "The experience." "You have exactly the experience we need," Grace interrupted gently. "You understand kindness not as a business strategy, but as a way of life. That's what we want to cultivate." Barbara Wells nodded enthusiastically. "Your story has already inspired our employees nationwide." 3 stores reported similar incidents yesterday. Employees helping stranded customers, delivering groceries to elderly shut-ins. Ethan shifted in his chair, uncomfortable with the attention. "That's just being decent." "Exactly," Grace said softly. "That's what we want to reward. Decency, humanity, the things that matter most." She paused, watching him process. "This isn't charity, Ethan. This is purpose." The room fell silent as Ethan reached into his pocket, carefully unfolding Lily's drawing. The crayon angel wings seemed to glow in the morning light. He thought of Laura, of her constant reminder to do the right thing. He thought of Lily, who saw him as a hero simply for helping others. "Okay," he said, finally, his voice rough with emotion. "I'll do it, but I have one condition." Grace raised an eyebrow, curious. "Name it. I want to call the program Lily's Wings." He smoothed the drawing on the table. "To remind everyone that sometimes the purest wisdom comes from children." Smiles broke out around the table. Grace's eyes glistened as she nodded. "I think that's perfect." The next few hours flew by in a whirlwind of paperwork and introductions. Ethan was given an office, nothing fancy, but with a window overlooking the city park. By afternoon, he had a small team assembled and was already sketching out ideas on a whiteboard. "We could start with simple recognition," he mused, marker squeaking as he wrote. "Catch people doing good things. Make kindness visible." His assistant, Sarah, typed rapidly on her tablet. The stores could submit weekly nominations. "We could feature stories on our website, social media, and real rewards," Ethan added, thinking of the struggling employees he'd known. Extra vacation days, grocery vouchers, college scholarship opportunities for their kids. The ideas flowed freely, each one building on the last. By evening, the whiteboard was covered with plans and possibilities. Ethan stepped back, surveying their work with satisfaction. A soft knock at the door made him turn. Grace stood there, taking in the scene with evident pleasure, her eyes fixed on the top of the project board, where Lily's drawing had been carefully pinned. "It looks like you've been busy," she said, walking closer to read the notes. "It's starting to come together," Ethan replied, capping the marker. "We're thinking of launching pilot programs in 10 stores next month." Grace nodded, but her attention was still on Lily's drawing. "You know, she said quietly. When I first saw this, I thought it was just a sweet child's picture. Now I understand. It's a vision of what's possible when we remember our humanity. Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest as he looked at the simple crayon sketch that had somehow started it all. My daughter sees the world better than most adults do, he said softly. She still believes in angels. Maybe she's right. Grace touched the corner of the drawing gently. Maybe they're just disguised as ordinary people who stop to help on rainy days. Their eyes met briefly, sharing a moment of perfect understanding. Then Grace straightened, professional once more. The board wants a preliminary presentation next week. Do you think you'll be ready? We'll be ready, Ethan assured her, already turning back to his notes with renewed energy. The late afternoon sun caught the drawing's crayon wings, making them shimmer like real feathers against the project board. Ethan stood before a group of Freshmart employees in Kansas City, his voice steady and warm as he shared the story that had changed everything. The conference room was packed, with some workers even standing along the walls to listen. It's not about grand gestures, he explained, gesturing to Lily's drawing projected on the screen behind him. Sometimes it's just stopping to help someone change a tire. Sometimes it's noticing when your coworker needs a hand with heavy boxes. Small acts of kindness ripple out in ways we can't imagine. The employees nodded, some wiping away tears. Ethan had a way of touching hearts without trying. His sincerity shone through every word. After the presentation, a young cashier approached him. Mr. Cole, I just wanted to say, your story inspired me to start a food collection for elderly customers who can't make it to the store anymore. My manager approved it yesterday. Ethan's face lit up. That's exactly what Lily's Wings is about. What's your name? Sarah, she replied, beaming. Well, Sarah, you're making a real difference. Keep going. These moments repeated themselves across the country as Ethan visited store after store. In Denver, a produce manager started letting local food banks collect unsold fresh vegetables before they spoiled. In Omaha, the delivery drivers began checking on their elderly customers during heat waves. In Street, Louis, a team of stalkers created a buddy system to help single parents shop with their children. Back at his hotel each night, Ethan would call Grace to share the day's stories. Their conversations had become a cherished ritual, filled with laughter and genuine connection. You won't believe what happened in Springfield today, he said, settling onto the hotel bed one evening. The whole night shift pooled their tips to buy a car for their coworker who's been walking 3 miles to work. Grace's warm chuckle came through the phone. See? You're changing the whole culture, one store at a time. There was a pause, then a soft gasp. Oh, the baby's kicking again. He always seems to dance when he hears your voice. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. How are you feeling? Not overdoing it, I hope? Just the usual pregnancy adventures. My ankles have declared war on my shoes, and I've developed a concerning addiction to pickle-flavored ice cream. Their easy laughter filled the quiet evening. These calls had become something more than just work updates. They were moments of genuine friendship, of shared purpose and understanding. The next week found Ethan in Chicago, where a deli worker had started a pay-it-forward sandwich program for homeless customers. In Detroit, the bakery department was teaching free cake decorating classes to local kids. Each story added another thread to the tapestry of compassion spreading through the company. During a video call with the board, Grace proudly shared the numbers. Employee satisfaction up 40%, customer loyalty scores at an all-time high, and positive social media mentions increasing daily. But it was the personal stories that meant the most. The countless letters and emails from employees and customers alike sharing how Lily's Wings had touched their lives. Lily herself had become the program's unofficial mascot. Her original drawing of Ethan with angel wings had been turned into the program's logo, and she took great pride in hearing about all the helpers her daddy was training. Did you help more people today, Daddy? She would ask during their nightly FaceTime calls, her face pressed close to the screen. I sure did, sweetheart. But you know what? They were already helpers inside. They just needed someone to remind them. As the weeks passed, Grace's pregnancy progressed, and her excitement was contagious. She would send Ethan pictures of her office's gradual transformation, now featuring a cozy corner with a rocking chair and small bookshelf filled with children's stories. The board thinks I'm nesting, she texted one day, along with a photo of herself arranging stuffed animals on the shelf. They might be right. 3 months into the program, Ethan returned home to help prepare for a company-wide celebration. It would also serve as a baby shower for Grace, though she insisted on keeping it low-key. The event planning committee had other ideas, however, and the preparations were anything but subtle. The morning of the celebration, Ethan and Lily stood in their apartment, getting ready. Lily twirled in her new blue dress, her dark curls bouncing. "Do you think Miss Grace will like my present?" she asked, carefully holding the handmade scrapbook she'd created. It was filled with drawings of babies and angels, each page decorated with glitter and stickers. "She's going to love it, sweetie," Ethan assured her, straightening his tie. He caught his reflection in the mirror and barely recognized himself. Gone was the worried look that had haunted his eyes for so long. Instead, he saw purpose there, and joy. Lily appeared beside him, reaching up to straighten his already straight tie. "Daddy?" "Yes, baby?" "I think Mommy would be happy about all the helping we're doing." Ethan's throat tightened as he knelt down to hug her. "I think so too, Lilybug. I think so too." They gathered their things, Lily's present, Ethan's speech notes, and a small photo album of program highlights he'd compiled. The celebration would bring together employees from across the country, all sharing their stories of how Lily's wings had transformed their workplaces and communities. As they headed for the door, Lily paused to adjust the angel wings, drawing that still hung in pride of place on their refrigerator. The corners were slightly worn now, but the message remained clear and true. "Daddy helps people." "Ready?" Ethan asked, holding out his hand. Lily took it, beaming up at him. "Ready." The grand ballroom of the Jefferson Hotel sparkled with golden light. Hundreds of Freshmart employees from across the country filled the rows of chairs, their faces bright with anticipation. Above the stage, a banner displayed the new program's logo, a pair of angel wings surrounding the words, "Lily's Wings, Kindness in Action." Ethan stood off to the side, adjusting his tie nervously. Lily bounced beside him in her new blue dress, clutching her original drawing, now carefully framed. Grace sat in the front row, radiant in a flowing maternity dress, her hand resting on her prominent belly. The company's board chairman stepped up to the podium. Today marks more than just the launch of a program. It represents a return to values that should never have been forgotten. One by one, employees came forward to share their stories. A cashier from Oklahoma described how a regular customer had helped her escape an abusive relationship. A stockboy from Nebraska told of how his manager had paid for his mother's medicine when insurance wouldn't cover it. A delivery driver shared how his coworkers had rebuilt his porch after a tornado. Sarah Martinez, a young deli worker from Texas, wiped tears as she spoke. "Last month, an elderly man couldn't afford his groceries. My supervisor told me to add them to her personal tab." That's the kind of place we should be, where kindness matters more than policy. In the audience, several people dabbed their eyes. Ethan felt his throat tighten as he watched the impact of simple acts of compassion rippling through the room. The chairman returned to the podium. "And now, the woman who made all this possible, our CEO, Grace Whitmore." Grace rose carefully, her pregnancy making her movements deliberate. The crowd applauded warmly as she took the stage. Her face glowed with emotion as she surveyed the room. 2 months ago, when this story broke in the media, many questioned whether kindness had a place in business, she began. They called it naive, impractical, bad for the bottom line. She paused, one hand unconsciously cradling her belly, but they were wrong. She gestured to where Ethan stood. "This man taught me something precious. When he stopped to help a stranger that rainy morning, he didn't know who I was. He didn't expect reward or recognition. He simply saw someone in need and chose to help." Grace's voice grew stronger. "That's the lesson we're here to embrace." Ethan Cole reminded us that the heart of a company beats in the hearts of its people. Every time we choose kindness over convenience, humanity over policy, we make this world a little better. The audience burst into applause. Grace smiled and continued. "The Lily's Wings program will recognize and reward acts of compassion throughout our company. But more importantly, it will remind us who we are and what we stand for." She turned toward Ethan and Lily. "Would you both please join me?" Lily skipped onto the stage, her father following more sedately. Grace took the framed drawing from Lily's hands and held it up. "This drawing, by an 8-year-old girl who saw her father as an angel, will hang in every Freshmart store. It will remind us that heroes don't wear capes. They wear delivery uniforms and name tags. They stock shelves and bag groceries. They stop to help strangers, expecting nothing in return." The crowd rose to their feet, applauding thunderously. Lily beamed with pride, while Ethan blushed at the attention. Grace reached for the podium to steady herself, her face suddenly contorting. She began, then gasped sharply. Her hand flew to her side as she stumbled slightly. Ethan stepped forward quickly, catching her elbow. Grace? I think, she whispered, eyes wide. The baby has interesting timing. The audience murmured in concern as Grace doubled over with another contraction. The chairman rushed forward, calling for medical help. Lily hovered anxiously nearby as Ethan supported Grace. Always dramatic timing with you, Ethan teased gently, trying to keep her calm while security cleared a path through the startled crowd. Grace managed a weak laugh between breaths. Couldn't let you have all the attention. The hotel staff quickly brought a wheelchair. As they helped Grace into it, the gathered employees watched with a mixture of worry and excitement, the celebration temporarily forgotten in the face of this unexpected development. Thunder rumbled outside as Ethan helped Grace down the hotel's marble steps, his arms steady around her waist. Rain pelted the sidewalk just like that fateful morning months ago. Lily trailed behind them, clutching her drawing to her chest, her eyes wide with worry. How far apart are they? Ethan asked, his voice calm despite his racing heart. Grace breathed through another contraction, her fingers digging into his shoulder. Maybe 4 minutes? She tried to smile, but pain creased her forehead. The universe has quite a sense of humor, doesn't it? Same rain, same road, different driver. They reached Ethan's truck, no longer quite so old, thanks to recent repairs. He helped Grace into the passenger seat, just as she had sat there months ago with a flat tire. Lily climbed into the back, unusually quiet. Hold on, Ethan said, starting the engine. I know these roads like the back of my hand. His words echoed Grace's from that first morning, bringing a weak laugh from her despite the pain. The wipers squeaked across the windshield as they drove through the stormy evening. Streetlights cast long shadows across Grace's face, now pale with discomfort. She breathed deliberately, counting under her breath. Daddy? Lily's small voice came from the back seat. Is Miss Grace going to be okay? She's going to be just fine, sweetheart, Ethan assured her, catching Grace's grateful glance. Sometimes the best things in life come with a little rain. Grace reached over and squeezed his hand. You know what I was thinking about that morning? How alone I felt, watching all those cars pass by. She paused, breathing through another contraction. But not anymore, not with you two. They pulled into the emergency entrance of Street, Mary's hospital. Unlike that morning months ago when they'd parted as strangers, now they moved as a unit. Ethan helped Grace from the truck while Lily ran ahead to alert the nurses. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor cast everything in stark relief as they wheeled Grace toward the maternity ward. She gripped Ethan's hand tightly, fear finally showing through her composed exterior. Stay, she whispered, both of you. Right outside, Ethan promised. We're not going anywhere. The medical team whisked Grace away through double doors, leaving Ethan and Lily in the waiting area. They sat together on hard plastic chairs, both still in their formal clothes from the ceremony. Lily's drawing rested in her lap, those simple angel wings now seeming prophetic. Hours ticked by. Lily eventually dozed off, her head on Ethan's shoulder, while he kept his silent vigil. He thought about Laura, about loss and new beginnings, about how life had such strange ways of coming full circle. The wait seemed endless. Ethan prayed quietly, his free hand absently stroking Lily's hair. He remembered Grace's words from the diner. Sometimes good people deserve good turns. Now he understood, sometimes those turns brought you exactly where you needed to be. Rain continued to drum against the windows, but inside, the hospital maintained its quiet rhythm of beeping monitors and soft footsteps. Occasionally, other families drifted in and out of the waiting room, each wrapped in their own anxious anticipation. Lily stirred, blinking sleepily. Is the baby here yet? Not yet, sweetheart. Ethan checked his watch, but soon. She nodded sagely, studying her drawing. The baby will have 2 angels watching over them now. Mommy in heaven and you here. Ethan's throat tightened at his daughter's words. Before he could respond, a nurse appeared in the doorway, her face bright with joy. Mr. Cole? She smiled warmly. She wants you to meet someone. Lily sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. The baby's here? The nurse nodded. Your friend did wonderfully. Would you like to come see? Ethan stood, his heart pounding. He took Lily's hand, and together they followed the nurse down the quiet hallway. The storm outside had finally passed, and early morning light was beginning to streak the sky. Through the window of room 312, they could see Grace propped up in bed, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in blue. Her face, though tired, glowed with a joy that made Ethan's chest ache with remembered happiness. The nurse ushered them in quietly. Grace looked up, her eyes bright with tears and triumph. "We did it," she whispered. "Come meet him." Lily tiptoed to the bedside, standing on her toes to peek at the Tav. "Sleeping infant. He's so tiny," she breathed in wonder. "Would you like to hold him?" Grace asked Ethan, who had remained near the door, overwhelmed by the moment's perfection. He moved forward carefully, accepting the precious bundle with practiced ease. The baby stirred slightly but didn't wake, tiny fingers curling against the blanket. Lily pressed close to her father's side, reaching out to touch the baby's hand with one gentle finger. "Thank you," Grace said softly, watching them. "For everything. For stopping that day. For being here now." Ethan looked up from the peaceful newborn face, meeting her eyes. In them, he saw all the rainy mornings and sunny afternoons that had brought them to this moment, all the kindness and courage that had turned strangers into family. "What's his name?" Lily asked, breaking the spell. Grace smiled. "Thomas. It means twin." She paused. "Because sometimes the best things in life come in pairs, like kindness and courage, or friends who become family." The nurse appeared in the doorway. "She needs to rest now," she said gently. The hospital corridor stretched before Ethan like a path into another world. His shoes squeaked against the polished floor as he walked, Lily's small hand clasped tightly in his. The gentle hum of medical equipment and distant voices created a rhythm that matched his quickening heartbeat. "Remember to be extra quiet, sweetheart," he whispered to Lily, who nodded solemnly, her pigtails bouncing. They paused outside room 312. Through the narrow window, Ethan caught a glimpse of Grace, looking exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blue blanket. His throat tightened with emotion. The scene reminded him so much of Laura after Lily was born. He knocked softly, and Grace's tired voice called them in. The room was bathed in the warm glow of a bedside lamp. Outside, rain streaked down the windows, creating shifting patterns on the walls. Grace looked up, her face glowing with new motherhood, dark circles under her eyes, doing nothing to dim her joy. "Meet Gabriel," she said softly, adjusting the blanket to reveal a perfect tiny face. Lily immediately tiptoed to the bedside, standing on her toes to peek at the baby. Her eyes widened with wonder. "He's so small," she whispered. Ethan moved closer, taking in the miracle before him. Gabriel's tiny fingers flexed against the blanket, his rosebud mouth making small movements in his sleep. "Gabriel," Grace explained, her voice thick with emotion, "after the angel who brings good news." She looked up at Ethan, her eyes shining. "Because that's what you were to me that morning, an angel appearing exactly when I needed one." Ethan felt his cheeks warm. "I just did what anyone should have done." "But they didn't," Grace countered gently. "You did, and now." She glanced down at her son. "Now everything's different." Lily tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Daddy, can I touch him?" Grace nodded, and Ethan lifted Lily carefully onto the edge of the bed. With the gentleness only children seem to possess, Lily reached out and stroked Gabriel's cheek with one finger. "He's like velvet," she whispered in awe. Grace shifted slightly, wincing. "Would you like to hold him, Ethan?" He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. With practiced movements from his days with newborn Lily, he gathered Gabriel into his arms. The baby weighed almost nothing, yet Ethan felt the weight of the moment pressing on his heart. "Support his head, Daddy," Lily instructed seriously, making both adults chuckle. Gabriel stirred slightly, his tiny face scrunching before relaxing again. Ethan swayed gently, muscle memory from 8 years ago guiding his movements. The familiar weight of a newborn in his arms brought back a flood of memories. Laura's smile, Lily's first cry, the overwhelming love he'd felt. "You're a natural," Grace observed softly. Lily stood up on the bed, careful not to jostle Grace. "Look, Daddy. He's holding your finger." "Sure enough." Gabriel's tiny hand had wrapped around Ethan's index finger with surprising strength. The simple gesture made Ethan's heart swell. "Our new family," Lily announced proudly, looking between Grace and the baby with complete acceptance. The words hung in the air, beautiful and unexpected. Ethan's eyes met Grace's across the room. There was no awkwardness, no romantic tension, just a deep understanding. A soul-level connection forged through kindness and trust. They were family now, but not in the traditional sense. Something rarer, perhaps even more precious. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Your daughter has wisdom beyond her years, Ethan. She gets that from her mother, he replied softly, thinking of Laura's gentle insight. They stayed like that for a while, sharing the peaceful moment. Lily curled up next to Grace, asking questions about the baby in her earnest 8-year-old way. Grace answered each one patiently, her hand absently stroking Lily's hair, as if she'd done it 1,000 times before. Ethan continued to hold Gabriel, watching the newborn's peaceful face. He thought about the strange path that had led them here. A flat tire, an act of kindness, loss and redemption, and now this new beginning. The baby in his arms was living proof that good things could come from simple, decent choices. A change in the light made him look up. Through the hospital window, the heavy rain had finally stopped. Sunshine broke through the clouds, sending rays of golden light streaming into the room. The sudden brightness made Gabriel stir and blink, revealing eyes as blue as a summer sky. "Look," Lily whispered, pointing to the window. The rain stopped. The autumn breeze rustled through the sheer curtains of Grace's spacious kitchen, carrying with it the crisp scent of fallen leaves and the promise of evening. Golden sunlight slanted through the tall windows, casting warm pools of light across the granite countertops where Ethan stirred a pot of his famous homemade spaghetti sauce. The wooden spoon moved in slow, practiced circles as he tasted and adjusted, adding just a pinch more oregano the way Laura used to do. The recipe was Laura's, one of the many precious treasures she'd left behind, handwritten on a card that was now soft and worn from use. The rich aroma of basil, garlic, and vine-ripened tomatoes filled the warm air, mixing with the sound of children's laughter floating in from the living room like music. "Gentle with baby Gabriel, sweetie," Ethan called out, though he knew he didn't need to remind Lily. His 8-year-old daughter had proven to be the most attentive big sister anyone could wish for, even if not by blood. She seemed to have an intuitive understanding of how to make Gabriel smile, how to hold him just right, how to speak to him in that special voice children use with babies. In the living room, 5-month-old Gabriel lay contentedly on his colorful playmat, his chubby hands reaching up with determined concentration at the soft toys Lily dangled above him. The mobile of farm animals cast dancing shadows on the ceiling as it spun slowly in the afternoon breeze. Gabriel's delighted giggles echoed through the house, pure, infectious joy that seemed to bubble up from somewhere deep within his tiny soul. The kind of sound that made everything feel right with the world. Grace sat perched at the kitchen island, her reading glasses balanced on the tip of her nose as she carefully flipped through a thick binder filled with reports and testimonials. Her usual business attire had been replaced by comfortable, dark jeans and a soft cream sweater that made her eyes look even warmer. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail, loose strands framing her face in a way that made her look younger, more relaxed. She looked more at peace than Ethan had ever seen her, the sharp edges of corporate stress smoothed away by love and contentment. "Ethan, these numbers are absolutely incredible," she said, tapping the report in front of her with genuine amazement. Over 300 documented acts of kindness through Lily's wings in just the first quarter alone. The program's reaching far beyond what we ever imagined when we started. Ethan wiped his hands on the red checkered dish towel hanging from his shoulder and walked over to peek at the report over her shoulder. The pages were filled with stories that made his heart swell, employees going out of their way to help customers, managers supporting struggling workers, small acts of compassion rippling outward like stones thrown into still water. "People want to do good," he said simply, his voice carrying the quiet conviction that had always defined him. "Sometimes they just need permission to stop and help. Sometimes they need to see that kindness matters more than schedules." Grace smiled, her eyes growing distant as she remembered that rainy morning that seemed like a lifetime ago now, when she'd been stranded and scared, and a stranger had stopped to change her life. Like stopping for a stranded pregnant lady with a flat tire? Exactly like that. Ethan grinned, returning to stir the sauce with gentle, circular motions. "Though I didn't expect that particular act of kindness to change quite so many lives. I thought I was just helping someone get back on the road." From the living room came another burst of baby laughter, bright and musical, followed by Lily's gentle, sing-song voice. "Look, Gabriel!" The elephant goes up, and down, and up again. "See how he dances just for you?" Grace's eyes softened as she turned to watch them through the open doorway. Lily sat cross-legged beside the playmat, her dark hair escaping from her braids in wispy curls around her face. She moved the toys with such care, such tenderness, as if Gabriel were made of the most precious glass. The baby's eyes followed her every movement, his little mouth forming perfect circles of wonder. "She's amazing with him," Grace murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined. I hope they'd bond, but this is something special." "She has a big heart," Ethan said proudly, his chest swelling with paternal love, just like her mother did. "Laura always said Lily would be a wonderful big sister someday." His voice caught slightly on his wife's name, but it was a gentle catch, grief mixed with gratitude rather than pain. They shared a quiet moment, both thinking of Laura. Her presence still filled these moments, not as a shadow of sadness, but as a warm blessing, a reminder that love never truly leaves, that it transforms and grows and finds new ways to shine through the people we cherish. "Daddy!" Lily called out, her voice carrying that particular note of urgency that only children can master. "Gabriel's getting his hungry faces again." Ethan glanced at the kitchen clock and realized how quickly the afternoon had slipped away. "Dinner's almost ready, sweetheart," he replied, giving the sauce one final stir before turning off the heat. "Would you like to help set the table? We can use the good dishes tonight." Lily appeared in the doorway moments later, her dark hair falling in loose waves from her braids, her cheeks flushed with the excitement of being needed. "Can I use the special plates? The ones with the little blue flowers around the edges?" Grace nodded, her heart warming at how naturally Lily had claimed her place in this home. "Of course you can, honey. They're in the bottom cabinet next to the sink. Be careful, they belong to my grandmother." As Lily carefully carried the delicate plates to the dining room one by one, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration, Ethan lifted Gabriel from his playmat. The baby immediately reached for Ethan's nose with both hands, his favorite game that never seemed to get old. His tiny fingers were surprisingly strong as they gripped and explored. "Easy there, little man," Ethan chuckled, supporting Gabriel's wobbly head. "With practiced ease. Let's get you settled in your high chair before you decide my nose belongs to you permanently." Dinner was a warm, comfortable affair, filled with the kind of easy conversation that only comes with true family. The dining room glowed with soft lamplight, and Grace had lit a vanilla candle that added to the cozy atmosphere. Lily chatted animatedly about her school day and her latest art project, a painting of their family that included all four of them, plus Angel Laura watching over them from a cloud. Gabriel entertained himself by dropping his colorful plastic spoon repeatedly, dissolving into delighted giggles each time. Grace or Ethan patiently picked it up and handed it back to him. His high chair was decorated with bits of mashed sweet potato and applesauce, evidence of his enthusiastic approach to eating. After the dishes were cleared and the kitchen cleaned, a task they tackled together like a well-practiced dance. Moving around each other with comfortable familiarity, Grace settled into her favorite oversized armchair by the fireplace with the community report. The soft throw blanket that had belonged to her mother was draped across her lap, and the warm glow of the table lamp created a perfect reading nook. "Listen to this one," she said, adjusting her glasses and reading from the report with wonder in her voice. "Our delivery driver, Marcus, noticed that Mrs. Chin, an elderly customer, hadn't picked up her regular grocery order for 3 days. Instead of just marking it as unclaimed, he drove to her apartment to check on her. He found she had fallen in her bathroom and couldn't get up. He called an ambulance and stayed with her until help arrived. Then followed up the next day to make sure she was okay." That's the spirit of Lily's Wings right there, seeing people as more than just customers. Ethan nodded thoughtfully, remembering his own years of deliveries, the countless faces he'd encountered, the small moments of connection that had meant more than anyone realized. Every small act matters. Sometimes the smallest acts matter most of all. Grace continued reading, her voice growing more animated with each story. "And here's another one. A cashier noticed a young mother counting out coins to pay for baby formula, clearly short on money. Instead of making her put items back, the cashier quietly used her employee discount and paid the difference herself. Later, when the store manager heard about it, instead of reprimanding her, he started a fund for customers in need." "Time for bed, little ones," Grace announced, glancing at the grandfather clock in the corner and noting how the evening had slipped away. Gabriel was already drowsy in his bouncer, his eyelids growing heavy as he fought sleep. Lily was curled up on the rug, trying to suppress a yawn as she colored in her new coloring book. "Can Daddy tell us a story?" Lily asked, even as she rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand. "Please? Just one story before bed?" "Of course he can." Grace smiled, lifting Gabriel and cradling him against her shoulder. "I'll get this sleepy little man changed into his pajamas while you get ready for story time." In Lily's room, her special weekend room at Grace's house, decorated with her colorful artwork, twinkling fairy lights strung along the walls, and a bookshelf filled with her favorite stories, Ethan sat on the edge of the twin bed with its purple comforter. The room smelled faintly of lavender from the sachet Grace had tucked under the pillow. Grace joined them moments later, cradling a now pajama-clad Gabriel whose eyes were fighting a losing battle with sleep. "Once upon a time," Ethan began, his voice taking on the gentle, rhythmic cadence that had soothed Lily through countless bedtime stories. "There were special angels who looked just like regular people walking down the street. They didn't have shimmering wings you could see with your eyes, but they had invisible wings in their hearts that grew stronger every day. These angels had a very important job. They helped people who had gotten stuck on life's winding road." Lily snuggled deeper under her covers, fighting sleep because she loved her daddy's stories too much to miss a single word. The fairy lights cast gentle patterns on the ceiling above her bed. "Like when you helped Miss Grace with her flat tire?" "Exactly like that, sweetheart," Ethan smiled, smoothing the blanket around her small form. "Sometimes these heart angels fixed flat tires on rainy mornings, or carried heavy groceries for people with tired arms, or simply stopped to listen when someone felt sad and alone. And every single time they helped someone, their invisible wings grew a little bit stronger, a little bit brighter." Grace rocked Gabriel gently in the antique rocking chair that had been her own mother's, her own eyes growing misty as she listened to Ethan's soft voice weaving magic in the lamplight. The baby's breathing had grown deep and even, his tiny fist curled around Grace's finger. "But here's the most magical part of all," Ethan continued, his voice growing even softer as he watched Lily's eyelids flutter. "Sometimes when these angels stopped to help others, they didn't just fix flat tires or solve problems, they found their way home. Not to a house made of wood and brick, but to the kind of home that exists in hearts, where love and kindness live forever and ever." Lily's eyes finally surrendered to sleep, a peaceful smile gracing her face as dreams began to take hold. Gabriel was already fast asleep in Grace's arms, his tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm, his impossibly long eyelashes casting shadows on his round cheeks. Ethan leaned down and kissed Lily's forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of her shampoo. "Sweet dreams, little angel," he whispered. At the doorway, he paused beside Grace, who still held Gabriel close, reluctant to break the spell of this perfect moment. The soft glow of the nightlight cast everything in warm gold, illuminating Lily's frame drawing on the wall, the one of him with bright yellow angel wings that read, "Daddy helps people," in careful crayon letters. Looking at Grace, at their unlikely but absolutely perfect family, at the peaceful children who had brought such joy into their lives, Ethan felt his heart swell with gratitude for the winding path that had led them all here. He smiled softly and whispered the words that had become their family motto, their reminder of how love finds its way. "Sometimes, when you stop to help someone else, you find the road that leads you home." What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Cole, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.